Want AI to generate a to-do list for you, or maybe remind you to send that email you keep forgetting? How about summarizing a long meeting you zoned out in? Well, 15 years ago, I would have told you there's an app for that. Now I'll say there's an AI listening device that's always on for that. WSJ Tech columnist Joanna Stern strapped one to her wrist for 3 weeks. Joanna, first, why in the world would you do this?
Back in January, I read about this device called the Bee Pioneer bracelet, and it was $50. It was announced at CES, and I saw people talking about this device that just records everything. It is nonstop recording when it hears your voice or other voices, and then it uses AI to summarize and analyze what you are saying. And I will say that within a few minutes or hours of wearing this thing, I was completely blown away. One, by how creepy it was. The fact that everything I had said had been transcribed and now lived in an app. And that wasn't only everything I'd said, but anyone I had talked to, that transcription was there. And then two, how it was proactively listening to those conversations and adding things that I had said I would do or somebody had asked me to do to a to-do list. And so my memories and everything I need to remember has just been outsourced to this bracelet on my wrist.
And that's the part that I'm so curious about, because if you think about this device hearing absolutely everything you do in a day, what actionable information did it create for you from all that it was hearing you say and do?
Here's an example. Me and you were talking about this, and at the end of this conversation, I'll say, I'm going to send you that recording. I'll do it when I'm done with this next meeting. And it would take that and put it on my to-do list. It would say, send Victoria the recording of the podcast. It has that context. It's using AI, using large language models to make sense of all that's being said.
A question that a lot of our listeners will probably have is how exactly can it process all of that information? Because you're talking about 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. What does it do with all that information, and how does it process it so quickly?
The way Bee does it, and I did review some other devices, but I'll talk about how Bee does it, is the device is listening. It's monitoring for audio. Once it hears that audio, it uses Bluetooth to take the microphone, what it's hearing on the bracelet, sending it to the phone, and then sending it to the cloud to do the processing of the transcription. And Bee is actually tossing out the audio. You can't listen back to your conversations. You can only read the transcriptions. And frankly, they're not great transcriptions. Like, we use transcriptions, of course, a lot in our work, and we want them to be as close as possible, so we want to get the quote perfect. This doesn't really need to get the quote perfect. It just needs to get like a general sense of what that conversation was about. And so then they take that transcription and they run it through large language models. And they're using that to summarize as you go. So yes, it's a lot of data, but it's also not as much because you don't have that big audio file, and it's been turned into a text file, which is smaller, and they're doing special stuff to make those files smaller and then send it back to your phone and your app so you can always access it.
What protections are in place to make sure that the private conversations that you do have, if you don't think about, because you mentioned in your story, there is a way that you can turn it off, make it stop listening, or is lack of privacy just something we're going to have to get used to as these things become wider spread?
Look, this is a privacy nightmare, but Bee and Limitless, which is the other one I've talked to, they have the right ideas about privacy in mind if you're going to build something like this. Yes, both of them have buttons on them to turn off the mics. Limitless is this little pendant that works in a similar way, but actually also gives you the audio to listen back to. It has a little light on it that's always glowing when you've got the mic on. Bee is in the process of changing the light setup, but right now it does also have a button. You press it, and actually when you press the button to turn off the microphone, it glows red, which doesn't make much sense since the universal light for recording is red, but they are planning to switch that soon in an update. Another thing you can do is you can delete any conversations or your account from the apps, and they say that completely clears this from their servers. Limitless, they keep that audio. You can say in the app how long you want them to keep the audio, so they can toss it after a number of days, or they have some presets that you can do. On top of that, both of them say that this information is encrypted on their servers. Nobody or no employees can access it, but of course, there's always risk with all of this stuff.
For the tech-savvy first adopters out there, though, one of the important things to consider if this becomes much more widespread, is that there are state-by-state restrictions on recording people's speech without their permission. So is this a minefield for individuals to navigate? Whose responsibility is this?
Absolutely. The first questions I started getting when I would tell people I was recording, and I was really clear with most of my conversations, like, this is recording, it's not recording the audio with the B, and I would explain all of that. But almost always the first question I would get from people is that legal? Can you even record me without my consent? And so talk to a few lawyers about this, and it really depends on what state you're in. So I was in New York and New Jersey, which are one-party consent states, where only one person, that's me in that case, has to agree to the recording. But if I were in one of the about a dozen other states that require two-party consent, I would need that permission of the person I was talking to and possibly people within an earshot that might be getting picked up. And I asked the companies about this. They said they're going to start to get more aggressive about telling people this. But there is such usefulness and utility in this that I do think some will start to use it. And I do think also I heard from a lot of readers in response, especially those that are starting to experience memory loss, and they were pretty game to try it.
That was Wall Street Journal senior personal tech columnist Joanna Stern.
Why do I need ID to get ID?
I don't know. BT.
If I had ID, I wouldn't need ID.
As of May 7th, this Wednesday, if you want to board a plane, you'll have to show a picture ID that's compliant with the Real ID Act. That is a federal law passed 20 years ago. And it means you'll have to show a federal ID such as a passport or one of the real IDs issued by states. NPR's Martin Costi has the story of why the law took so long to be enforced and how it'll affect citizens and non-citizens alike.
A lot of people assume that Real ID was a product of 9/11. But the truth is, Congress's worries about unreliable state IDs date back even earlier than that, to the fertilizer bomb used in Oklahoma City in 1995.
Because the Oklahoma City bombers bought their fertilizer using a counterfeit ID made by a wife of one of them on an ironing board.
Brian Zimmer helped to draft the Real ID Act as researcher for the House Judiciary Committee, though he says credit for the name goes to the committee chairman, former Republican Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner, who asked his staffers fresh out of college how young people talked about IDs.
What do the kids call when they have to bring their actual state driver's license to a concert? Well, the cops are going to check. He said, well, you're told to bring your real ID.
The law had two big goals: to make state IDs harder to counterfeit and to get states to be more thorough in verifying the information on those ID cards. Easier said than done.
It's probably more complicated than I ever thought it would be.
Faith Bradley is a professor of information systems technology at George Washington University. She wrote her doctoral dissertation on the Real ID Act back when the law was only 10 years old.
When I wrote my dissertation, I was thinking it's just a requirement. People fulfill the requirement and get their ID. But then it comes with ideology, view of the world, technology, your identity, how much information you share.
She says about half the states resisted Real ID at first, citing cost, privacy, and the burden for some people in providing extra documentation. The feds kept delaying the deadline and negotiating with the states, and eventually we ended up with different kinds of Real ID.
Now serving 670 at counter 14.
Washington State, for instance, offers enhanced driver's licenses, originally meant for border crossings, but now accepted by the TSA. But those are for citizens only. Most people lined up at this licensing office near Seattle are still going for the plane licenses, even though those won't work soon in airports. Lucia Orozco just got hers.
No viajamos mucho. Es un problema porque aquí solo trabajamos.
We don't travel much, so it won't be a problem, because we just work here and my kids are in school and we're fine, Orozco says. In Washington State, non-citizens will have to use something like a foreign passport or a green card to fly. Other states are offering Real IDs to non-citizens if they have legal status. And then there's the question of people in the country illegally. Tanya Broder is senior counsel at the National Immigration Law Center.
It will make it more difficult for people to come up with an acceptable ID, but before and after Real ID implementation, there were always risks to traveling while undocumented.
The Real ID Act allows states to issue second-tier licenses if they want to, even to people without legal status. 19 states do so. Those licenses are valid on the roads, but they won't work in airports. That compromise was built into the law in 2005, but now it's under threat from the Trump administration. It signaled that it may punish states that issue licenses to people in the country illegally. Critics of illegal immigration welcome this move. Jessica Vaughn is with the Center for Immigration Studies.
driver's licenses unlock access to a lot of privileges and benefits that shouldn't be available to people here illegally, including employment and welfare benefits. So sending the signal that they can stay here easily and hide in plain sight.
While the Real ID deadline in airports is finally upon us, the nationwide system is still under review. Brian Zimmer did consulting work on ID laws after he left his job in Congress, and he says TSA is now auditing compliance. And it's starting with the states it thinks have done the best job, giving a little more time to those that may have yet to fully reach the federal standard. Martin Costi, NPR News.
Let's look up white. Here. Read. White, of the color of pure snow, reflecting all the rays of the spectrum, the opposite of black. Free from spot or blemish, innocent, pure. Huh. Ain't this something? Without evil intent, harmless, honest, square dealing, and honorable. Wait a minute, but this...
The Catholic Church followed each step of a ritual that's centuries old. White smoke poured from a chimney yesterday, then a cleric appeared on a balcony to say these words in Latin.
Habemus Papam.
Habemus Papam. We have a pope. Thanks to my high school Latin teacher. Moments later, as we heard live on NPR, the cleric gave the name Robert Francis Prevost, and it became apparent that it was a pope from Chicago.
NPR's Rome correspondent Ruth Sherlock was there watching it all unfold in Vatican City. Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
So, Ruth, you got to watch this history being made. Tell us what it was like.
Well, you know, in those moments leading up to the white smoke, there were just people in prayer all over the square in their own languages. I heard Italian, French, Bengali. Sister Mary Agnes Mruga, a nun from Poland, gave this great description of what it was like waiting outside the Sistine Chapel while the cardinals were inside.
It's just exciting to be in the very place when they are, behind the wall. They are electing, and we're on the other side praying for them.
And then the white smoke just started billowing out of the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, meaning that new pope had been chosen. There were marching bands and chants of Viva il Papa, long live the Pope. And then it was announced, Robert Prevost, an American cardinal's pope. You know, the reaction where I was actually initially one of confusion. Lots of people hadn't heard through the tinny speakers. People were frantically trying to check their phones, but there was no phone data. But gradually the name Prevost kind of spread through the crowd, and then he appeared on the loggia of the Basilica.
His first public appearance as Pope Leo XIV. What was his message?
His first words were, "Peace be with you all." And you know, Layla, his speech had echoes of the papacy of his predecessor, Francis, for its global message. He sent well wishes of peace to, quote, all of the people all over the earth. He gave a special greeting to the Diocese of Chiclayo in Peru, where he lived for many years, where he was a bishop, and he recited the Hail Mary prayer with thousands of people joining him from the square.
And what was the reaction once people finally got the news and saw the new pope and were starting to get a sense of who he is? How were they reacting to him?
Well, the reaction was actually very mixed. Where I was standing, there was some disappointment, particularly among Italians. You know, there have been many Italian popes before, and they were hoping that one of the Italian cardinals would be chosen. Among Americans, though, as you can imagine, there was shock. There absolutely isn't a precedent for previous popes. Leo XIV is the first pope from the United States, as we said, and there was jubilation. Here's Max Gleason. He's a 21-year-old American college student studying in Rome.
I can't say for sure, but just seeing this few minutes of him up there and the emotion that he brought, he just looks like someone who's going to crush it.
So lots of optimism about what this Pope, might be able to achieve. Lots of expectations. It's a very difficult time in the world, and Pope Francis spoke repeatedly about human suffering and conflict, about poverty, and many people hoping he'll continue that legacy.
NPR's Ruth Sherlock. Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks so much, Layla.
Come on.
Okay. There's a snaz dictator on release
Come on.
records. Yeah, we're about to put Johannesburg on the map.
Come on.
President Trump is engineering mass deportations. He's also shut down refugee resettlement programs from multiple countries, including Afghanistan, Congo, and Syria. But there is one group Trump is welcoming, white South Africans. He's even issued an executive order offering them refugee status. Katya Schwenk, a reporter for the investigative news outlet The Lever, got a look at a memo outlining the Trump administration's plan to help them, and she joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Katya, how did you get your eyes on this memo, and what did it say?
Right. So, we were asking ourselves this question with our reporting, how is the Trump administration even able to resettle these white South Africans in the U.S., as the administration has been saying it's planning to do amid this refugee resettlement system that has gone into total chaos right now. Right. And so we were able to, access an internal memo from the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as speak to, a source in the government who is familiar with what's been going on. And really finding what we found was sort of the extent to which the Trump administration is sort of deploying this emergency authority and going against typical protocol in order to resettle these Afrikaners.
In what way? So, would it be through the Office of the Refugee Resettlement Program?
Yeah. So the Trump administration plans to use the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is the federal agency that typically handles many different kinds, many refugees that have traditionally entered the United States. But because, the nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and government contractors that are, typically involved in the resettlement process, many of them have been forced to close their doors amid the Trump administration settling these programs. So what this memo showed that we obtained is that the, OOR is asking for emergency authority in order to sort of directly provide assistance to white South Africans entering the U.S., is in fact using funds that are typically reserved for very high-risk refugees in order to resettle these South Africans.
What has the Department of Health and Human Services told you about what you saw?
Yeah, they didn't answer our questions initially, but after we published our story, they did get back to us and confirmed some of our reporting. They said that these special funds called the Preferred Communities Program that is typically reserved for, extremely vulnerable refugees, that these funds are in fact being tapped by the Trump administration. And, what this memo said was that these white South Africans are scheduled to arrive within days of the memo, which was dated April 30th. It's still not yet clear when the first group would arrive, although there's been other reporting that showed their applications are being approved. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
And very quickly, if President Trump suspended the refugee admissions program back in January, how would this work with white South Africans? Through this emergency power?
It seems that they are using this emergency authority, yes, to get around this chaos that's come from suspending the program.
Katya Schwenk of The Lever, thank you for your reporting and your time.
Thank you.
This the city of Chicago.
Prison is often described as a place to rehabilitate. Many advocates say it does the opposite, and it creates a cycle that's hard to break. Case in point, in Illinois, close to 40% of people who leave prison return within 3 years. Lawndale Christian Legal Center is trying to put an end to that pattern by keeping young men on probation out of prison. 20 men between ages 18 and 25 will have a chance to live in stable housing and get employment and legal support at the organization's newly renovated headquarters. Here with more information on that is Cliff Nellis, who's the CEO and founder of Lawndale Christian Legal Center. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sasha. Thanks for having us.
And Frederick Dennis, who went through the pilot program back in 2015, and he now works at Lawndale Christian Legal Center. Hey, Frederick.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Cliff, let me start with you. I want to know why this focus on men on probation specifically.
Sure. So most of the people we've represented over the last 15 years are young men under 26 years old. Arrest rates in Chicago are about 86% male and 14% female. So the people we've served for the last 15 years fall in that same demographic range. Mm-hmm. So that's just to say most of the people that we've represented and worked with over the last 15 years are young men.
Yeah.
And so it made sense to start there. We didn't want to start with a co-ed facility. We wanted to kind of reduce different kind of risks and start out small and do it well.
Yeah. When you were sort of assessing the needs of these people out on probation, what stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, right away, it was young men like Frederick who had shared right away that, hey, Cliff, I need a job. I need a safe house. I need, mental health not always readily, self-identified as a need. But I think as our young people mature and grow and start to understand triggers and some of the trauma they've experienced growing up, they start to see the value of mental health as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny that you say not usually self-identified. Is that something that normally would have to come from your assessment and your nudging?
Yeah, I think nudging is a good word. It's kind of a conversation over time that starts to help our young people see that some of the experiences they had in their childhood were very traumatic, and those things, mental health therapists know, but
yes.
You cope the way that we cope as children and in our adult life. Sometimes those aren't the best ways of coping.
Yeah. Take me back, Frederick. Tell me your story.
Well, my story started off in North Lundale, born and raised. My mom was addicted to heroin.
Okay.
I had a stepfather that was abusive to me, my brothers, and my mother. So growing up, I always wanted a different life. I always wanted like a High School Musical life, a Disney Channel life. When we watch TV shows like this, we've seen that, these kids had supportive families.
Yeah.
They had great friends, and they went to great schools. I didn't have that. A lot of the times I had to, steal clothes, steal food, out of grocery stores just to get by.
You felt like that was a necessity, even at that young age?
Yeah, that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
Because, we just didn't have anything. Mm-hmm. We went to school with hand-me-down clothes. We would get talked about because, we didn't have the newest stuff, so we would have problems at school. And just coming home and having to deal with problems at home, kind of like started all the problems.
Probably seemed never ending at that time, right?
Yeah.
Like it was coming from all angles.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And so what was happening at home and then what you felt like you needed to do, that trickled into your behavior.
Yes.
Right? And got you into some trouble.
Yes.
Yeah. And so how did you make your way to the Lawndale Christian Legal Center?
So by the time I was 12, I kind of found boxing, and that's kind of like helped me get away from a lot of the things that I was dealing with.
Boxing?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So when I found boxing, I made different friends. I got away from a lot of stuff that I was dealing with at home. I ended up going off to national silver gloves, and I became ranked 4th in the United States at 14.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was great, but I didn't know how good being 4th was, so that became my downfall, where I stopped boxing. I fell out of love with the sport, and I walked away from it. Started gang banging, started drinking, started smoking, and that's what basically led me to meeting Cliff and to meeting LCLC.
Yeah, downward spiral again, right?
Yes.
How, Cliff, did you get Frederick involved in that pilot program? Because I can't imagine that he was immediately open to something like this.
Yeah, I mean, he was in custody pending trial on the charges that I was representing him on, and he was looking at prison time. And so it was a lengthy negotiation with the state's attorney's office and the judge presiding over the case to basically pitch this as an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly how old you were, Frederick, but I want to say 19, 20, perhaps at the time. And, he was looking at 4 to 15 years, and given the charges, it would have more likely been around 8. And in fact, other people with those same charges did 8. And so, but what we basically said those to the judge is like, hey, we gave it what's called a mitigation package. It's a lengthy social history about everything a judge and state's attorney would want to know about Frederick and his childhood and his upbringing. Mm-hmm. And of course, there was a lot of sympathetic, details to that. He grew up he had a tough situation.
Yeah.
And anybody with any heart and soul would readily recognize that he grew up kind of surviving and making things happen on his own, which, no child can do that. So it's a recipe for what happens.
Right.
And so, we basically pitched that, hey, he could do 8 years in IDOC. He's going to come home, right? Or he could come to what we called the MAC House. It was the pilot for the Deer Center program, where you have a safe place to lay your head at night, right? Like for Frederick, his first time he had his own room, right? His own bed. And we helped pay for rent, utilities, food, so that they could go into workforce development trainings that were unpaid but necessary to get a career, not just a minimum wage job, but a career job. And Frederick and the other young men in the program we were working with local unions to get prevailing wage benefits. And so Frederick and 3 others got into union job, 1 got into non-union job, but all 5 of them stayed out of the criminal justice.
And this is all still in the pilot program stage of things, right?
Yeah, we didn't have nearly as many bells and whistles that we got at the Deer Center today. The Deer Center is way nicer than what we had. But it was 100% successful. And, to finish that story, though, the judge and the state's attorney finally signed off on it. They let him out pre-trial to get him in the program to see how he'd do for a little bit.
Yeah.
And once he started thriving and doing well, then the, state's attorney and the judge said, yeah, we want to give him a shot. And here he is today, 10 years later. Nobody, really, truly nobody who knows Frederick well could ever argue that our community would have been better off with him in jail. He's made our community safer these last 10 years. He's mentoring young kids in the neighborhood. He's helping them get off the streets. He can relate to where they're at, right? And I'll let him talk about all the great stuff he's done, but he's done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, tell us more about that success story, Frederick, and specifically the elements of this program that you feel were most helpful for you.
The element of this program that was most helpful for me was, having stable housing, have reliable transportation, and then even, getting put back into schools while, I can learn soft skills and hard skills, build up my resume, learn financial literacy. Those was all the essential parts that basically I needed.
Stable housing and a car, things that a lot of us take for granted, don't you think, Frederick?
Most definitely.
Talk about the importance of those details, especially for you back then. I mean, just getting to work, right?
Yeah, so when I came home, I was basically back on the couch at my mom's house. And, that was no good, basically. I didn't have a room to put my things. I didn't have, a bed to sleep on. I'd be waked up out of all type of the night just from people moving around or people, just, coming into the living room or coming in and out the house. So, I had my, own place with Cliff, with the Mac house. And basically, that just changed the trajectory of everything. Like I had a room that I can literally, like, my room was the size of my mom's living room. So it was different. I had my own bed. I was able to, go out and find a job. I was able to make my own money. And then on top of that, I was learning how to pay my own bills. I was learning how to keep up with the bills. I was learning how to budget, how to make sure I had the money. So it was just learning all things.
Yes, all necessary things.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Talk more about the relationships you built while there and going through the program with the 5 gentlemen, Frederick.
So the relationship we built was basically like a brotherhood,
Really?
We was learning more about each other. We was helping each other stay on the right path. We was encouraging each other, when things got hard or, when, someone was going through, a tough time, either with, a girlfriend or, a family member. We was there to support each other.
Yeah.
When push each other along.
The more you learned about them, did it start to sound like you had a lot in common?
Most definitely. I mean, we had everything in common. We came from the same neighborhood. We all had the same goals. Most of us had the same story.
Yeah. Talk more about that from your perspective, Cliff, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll look at it from maybe the criminal justice reform efforts that we're trying to lead at the Legal Center. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, Lake Zurich, and did not have the knowledge or the experience that I have today, now living in North Lawndale for almost the last 16 years and being close to people like Frederick. And what I saw really quickly, time and time again, is that we're taking young people who are growing up in survival mode, that have hard lives, and oftentimes our criminal justice system responds with two things: it's incarceration and permanent criminal records, and both of those things make a hard life harder. They don't actually change anything that's going on in the young person's life. It doesn't get to understand like the why behind the what, like what's going on in Frederick's life, what's going on in other people's lives. And having that holistic approach of truly understanding who, what, and why things happen, and giving an opportunity for young people to repair harm to the community, but also for the community to come around them and say, hey, listen, we're going to support you. And so, we're big champions of keeping young people in our community with supports instead of going to prison and having permanent records. And the thing, Deer Center is an example, I think, for the nation, honestly, to how to keep young men, 18 to 25, and one day young women too, in community with supports that will actually make our community safer, everyone safer, right? It's good for Frederick, it's good for the young people, of course, but it's actually good for victims. It's good for the community as a whole.
So you're mentioning Deer Center there. That's the location of the new headquarters for Lawndale Christian Legal Center. Tell us more about this expansion. Yeah, so it's named after our beloved community leader, our local commissioner. He was our senior vice president of the Lawndale Christian Legal Center, Dr. Dennis Deer. Okay. So it's an honor to carry on his legacy in this space. He was a big champion of this project. It holds all of our services. So our community holistic defense team is an integrated legal social team that works together as an attorney-client privilege team to provide representation from arrest all the way through trial, right? And that's a lawyer, a case manager, a street outreach worker working together to basically address the social situations and issues that are going on that are oftentimes the drivers of why they're on the streets and getting involved in the criminal justice system. So we want to do, and we do provide some of the best legal representation in the city of Chicago from arrest through trial. Yeah. And that's some of the way that you break that cycle that you just described.
Yeah, we want to walk our young people through this system and away from it, right? Never to return to it again. But to do that, you have to address the things that Frederick had shared about his life, right? He had a lot of trauma growing up. He had unstable housing. His family was growing up in poverty. And so they didn't have the things that we all take for granted. And if we don't address that, well, of course they're going to catch another case, and of course they're going to come back. All we've done is give them a felony record and some jail time. What did we do? And so, that's what our vision and mission is to build out this new system for young people under 26 years old. So juvenile 17 under, juvenile court 18 and 25, and adult court, where we're keeping them in community, but not necessarily in the same situation they were, but with new supports that really can help them realize their full potential.
Frederick, Cliff mentioned earlier, you run a boxing program now. So I want you to tell us more about it. How does it work?
So the boxing program called Boss Boxing Club was basically used boxing as a catalyst towards mental health. So BOSS just basically stands for Better Opportunity Supportive Services, which is what we're trying to provide to youth. And a lot of the times, like with my situation, growing up, I didn't know that I was dealing with traumatizing situation. I actually thought it was just a normal way for a child to grow up because, I seen so many kids in the neighborhood growing up just like I did. Yeah. But, as I got older, I realized, this is not a normal way for a child to grow up. And as I got older, I realized I was dealing with traumatizing experience, which basically led me to getting in trouble and to meeting Cliff, when I was 15. And if I would have known, I had somebody in my corner to help me process these traumatizing experiences or to help me process, the mental things that was going on in my head, I probably would have never gotten in trouble. I probably would have lived a different life or, I would have had a different direction. So that's all, we're trying to provide this mentorship through boxing, mental health services through boxing.
Yeah, but this connection happened for a reason, right? Yes. Better late than never.
Most definitely.
In this case. When you look at the young ones that you're working with now in your program, do you see some of your old ways in some of the kids or the potential for it to go in that way? Are you able to look at things differently now that you're sort of on the other side, Frederick?
Well, I look at things a lot differently, but I also see, that a lot of the kids, in the neighborhood need help, especially from the neighborhood that I'm from. Yeah. And it's not that they're bad kids, it's just they have no guidance. And it's the same thing with the parents, it's kids having kids, 16 years old, 18 years old, 20 years old. They don't know how to, be effective parents. They're trying to work jobs and make money and also, raise their kids at the same time. It's hard. So, we're just trying to provide the village to the child and provide a village to the same parent. It takes a village to raise a child. So, that's all we're trying to provide is that village, a little guidance, a little mentorship, mental health service.
It's a lot of work, but I'm glad you're taking it on. One kid at a time, right?
Most definitely.
That's all you can do. So initially, Cliff, you had 5 people. Now you're going to have 20 in this program. What does that feel like to expand in this way?
Yeah, it feels great. Honestly, I mentioned that in the pilot we didn't have many bells and whistles, and now we've got, we built a whole center designed around this, right? So we had architectural control, if you will, and it's a really
control. That's great.
It's a nice space, was done with intentionality. It's a, single occupancy unit. There's kitchenettes, private bath. There's a lounge with laundry on each floor. It's almost like a college experience. The living space is about the size of a dorm room, but there's bigger suites at the corner for like an RA. If somebody's been through the program, can stay and mentor the younger one through. So,
and aside
it's
from these
exciting.
20, I want to be clear, you're still going to be helping hundreds of other people
Correct.
at the center.
Yes, this is our headquarters. We serve minors and emerging adults, and yes, we're serving north of 300 every year. And so this will just be in addition to that. In our office wing, we have 20 units of housing on site with a commercial kitchen, a gym, a dining hall, a tech lab, mental health therapy rooms, all on site.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have 3 community partners on site with us too. NLEN is our workforce development partner. IMABLE is our mental health partner, and Association House of Chicago is our culinary partner in our commercial kitchen.
Yeah, and so now you're looking to get those 20.
Yeah, we've got 3 in. We got more on the way. Yeah, we've already got 3 living there.
Well, wishing you the best of luck. That's Cliff Nellis, who's the CEO and founder of Lawndale Christian Legal Center, and Frederick Dennis, who went through the original pilot program back in 2015 and now works at Lawndale Christian Legal Center as well. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Tell me who paid reparation on my soul. Got our machines right here. We got Techno Gym. We've got Mighty Masters.
Donnie Whetstone came to the Northwest in 1990.
I am a trainer who just happens to own a gym. That's what it is.
Based at Old Fort Lewis, he decided to stay in Washington State. He says he liked it better than his home state of Alabama.
As a little child, the first thing you learn to read is that little sign that says whites only. I remember that.
Today at 65, the owner of Whetstone Fitness considers himself a success, but he'd be happy to qualify for reparations from the city of Olympia.
To me, programs like that, those are investments. They're not expenditures.
I do feel a sense of obligation to say something and weigh in and take action on this issue.
Dante Payne is Olympia's first black mayor. He and the city council hired consultants to study how reparations might increase home ownership or offer direct financial support for the city's descendants of enslaved African people. The council will get a presentation on potential reparations next month, ranging from cash payments and funds for down payments on homes or repairs, free child care for black families, black-owned businesses would qualify for special grants, and landmarks could be renamed, something the city council has done before. This used to be known as the Fertile Grounds Park, but in 2021, the Olympia City Council voted to rename it after Rebecca Howard, a prominent black hotel owner and city booster who lived in Olympia when slavery was still legal in the U.S.
The way I see this is we're planting seeds. So this is long-term work that I see as it's not all going to get done in my time as mayor here.
The mayor says Olympia, like most cities, has a history of restricting where African Americans can live. He hopes Olympia's study might promote reparations across the country.
It's a conversation that black Americans have been having for centuries at this point. It all started with 40 acres and a mule that was never provided to help build that intergenerational wealth for black Americans.
I sincerely think that there's grounds for something like that, just based on history.
Donnie Whetstone says helping black-owned businesses and descendants of slaves would help everyone.
Initially, it would be probably a benefit to me because, being a black-owned business, but the thing about it is this, I give to the entire community.
Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
At this point, this is only a study with no plans to implement any of those potential reparations in the coming years.
Billie Holiday, I sing your blues. Bet your life against me and I swear to God you'll lose it. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis.
After years of protests, a shutdown, and now demolition, retribution could be on the way for those detained inside the former medium security jail known as the Workhouse. This is First Alert 4 at 10. I'm Samantha Jones.
And I'm Corey Stark. A local law firm announced today they reached a $4 million settlement with the city of St. Louis.
It's a development 7 years in the making. And tonight, 4's Kimberly Donahue is hearing from a former inmate and about the importance of this case.
It was only 30 days, but it was honestly the longest 30 days of my life.
Inez Bordeaux says in 2016, she spent a month inside the former medium security institution, also known as the workhouse. She spent years as one of the leading voices to close the facility.
It is infested with rats and roaches. It does have black mold growing on the walls. You see the snakes and the roaches in people's food.
Former Mayor Tashara Jones closed the jail in 2022. Demolition started this year, and Tuesday, Arch City defenders announced they reached a $4 million settlement agreement with the city of St. Louis. They estimate at least 16,000 formerly incarcerated people could receive a portion of the cash settlement.
Everyone who submits claim forms, we add up all of their total days they spent in jail, and we divide the settlement money by those days, and you get a daily rate.
Former Mayor Jones signed off on the settlement 2 days after losing her re-election bid. Current Mayor Kara Spencer said at a news conference Tuesday the city will follow a judge's decision.
The city is planning on, if the court, but it's still subject to court approval, of course, but the city does intend to support that.
I asked Arch City defenders if Jones's past support of closing the workhouse and her administration signing off on the settlement agreement was a conflict of interest.
While the mayor might have been a fan of some of the things that we did, the city councilor's office was really driving the litigation.
Bordeaux, years after her incarceration, says she's in the process of establishing a community resource hub for former inmates, looking forward to finally closing the book on the workhouse.
A closure, and it's the end of the workhouse era.
In St. Louis, Kimberly Donahue for Alert 4.
Deep in the heart. What'd you say now? I said deep in the heart. I can't hear you. Deep in the heart. Where's that? Texas.
More than 1,000 criminal cases across Texas may now have a question mark over them. The culprit? Faulty DNA tests. As Texas Public Radio's Paul Flabb reports, the tests were made by one of the biggest manufacturers in the world.
The Houston Forensic Science Center is reviewing hundreds of cases after it detected problems with QIAGEN EZ1 and 2 investigator DNA test kits. Center CEO Peter Stout says tests were coming back reading no DNA present when there was, or that it was just one person's when sometimes it was from multiple people.
It introduces a question mark that then the rest of the system has to try and figure out, okay, is this a case that was affected? And if so, what are we going to do about it? Do we need to retest it?
The Texas Department of Public Safety is reviewing around 700 cases at just one lab. QIAGEN is one of the big 3 manufacturers in the world of DNA tests. A QIAGEN company spokesman told NPR they received less than 10 complaints in the U.S. about the tests, but the company declined to say the total number of potentially affected tests, so measuring the true impact of the issue has been difficult to determine. Experts say it's a national problem.
It's a big deal because this is a product that almost everybody uses all across the U.S., really all across the world.
Dan Crane is a professor at Wright University and runs the company Forensic Bioinformatics. He says retesting is necessary if there's enough to retest.
A lot of these evidence samples are going to be, swabs of gun cartridges, for instance, and they had one crack at it, and, you just can't go back.
The problem raises serious implications for the justice system. Michael Kessler of Kessler Forensic Solutions, which consults on court cases, says labs could lose evidence that proves the guilt or exonerates a criminal defendant.
Texas is a death penalty state, so many others are. Justice is a matter of life and death.
The culprit for the faulty readings was tentatively identified as the pH balance of one of the chemicals used, the MTL buffer. QIAGEN told clients it changed the manufacturing process to fix the issue, adjusting the amount and makeup of the chemical in the cartridge. But private lab Signature Science in Austin, that does testing in criminal cases, said in a letter obtained by NPR that QIAGEN may not have identified all the affected kits, saying its testing was impacted into this year. For defense attorneys like Elizabeth Daniel Vasquez, there's a lot of unanswered questions on what happens now.
We're going to see a ton of cases where the impact of this is going to be directly clear. I think more likely what we'll see is a whole lot of lack of evidence that nobody realizes was lost in the process.
The work has just begun for labs across the country, says Peter Stout.
It's going to fall on the labs to do the retesting, and no forensic laboratory in the country has resources to keep up with just the work coming in the door, much less the rework potential and the audit that's going to come out of this.
leaving many court cases in limbo as potential retesting is addressed. In a statement, Lisa M. Wayne, executive director of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, asked, how many lives have been upended? How many souls languish in prison because of compromised science? For NPR News, I'm Paul Flabb in San Antonio.
So, you know, these events that keep coming up, instead of just reacting, dealing with them one at a time and being shocked each time we have another event that surfaces that is brought to our attention, we need to function from the position of an analysis that clarifies we are in a total system structure of racism, white supremacy, and that is why we are seeing the kinds of behaviors from individuals, be it Donald Sterling or be it George Zimmerman or any of the other cases that come to our attention. There is a reason that these cases exist. And I want to also talk about, in this case, they talked about mental health, but also gun control. And we have to begin to understand, I say you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand racism, white supremacy. The gun is the answer to conscious and or subconscious, the answer, the response to the white collective feeling they can be genetically annihilated by black genetic material. And the gun is a great equalizer. I encourage everybody to get a copy of the ISIS papers and read.
Well, we've got new video tonight of a DoorDash delivery driver before he got lost and was shot while on the job.
The man stopped at several homes in Orange County to ask for directions, but it's when he got to the home of the town of Chester Highway Superintendent that cops say he was met by gunfire.
Eyewitness News reporter Marcus Solis spoke to the victim's family and is live in Chester. Marcus?
Well, Sade and Bill, the family says they are grateful that that delivery man is still alive. He continues to recover after being shot in the back. But make no mistake, the family says they're angry and they're demanding justice.
He just started shooting at him and he thought his life was over.
She is a relative of the victim, the DoorDasher seen in this doorbell video trying to make a food delivery. On Friday night, the 24-year-old was lost on a rural road in Chester, the battery of his cell phone dead.
I need any help.
After asking for help at this house, the victim knocked on John Riley's door. That's where the town of Chester's highway superintendent allegedly shot the victim. Here's the version the DoorDasher told his family.
He asked the guy, "Is this your order?" The guy said no and proceeds to say, "Get off my property." He walks away. He's going about his day, going to his car, and the guy tries to murder him.
The victim first stopped at a gas station. Relatives say he was so scared he then drove all the way home to Middletown. The native of Guinea-Bissau moved to the U.S. just a few months ago to live with his siblings.
He's a really kind soul. Like he's really quiet. He doesn't really speak up much.
Riley is 48 years old, recently reelected to his post as highway supervisor and a federally licensed firearms dealer. No trespassing signs are now posted in front of the home. The victim is still hospitalized after undergoing surgery. His family relieved the injuries weren't life-threatening.
We're not a hateful family or anything. Yeah, the situation makes us angry, but we're just very grateful that he's alive, and we want this guy to get the punishment he deserves because he tried to kill him.
Well, the victim continues to recover in the hospital. In the meantime, Riley is facing assault and weapons charges. He's due in court later this week. And we're live in Chester. Marcus Solis, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie skies are wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas.
A disturbing act in Uvalde, all happening just weeks before the 3-year mark since the shooting at Robb Elementary School. Look at this, a sacred memorial to the 21 victims defiled. Today, families rushed to repair what they say was not just vandalism, but a violation of hallowed ground. Tonight, KENS 5's Elisa Neaves has this story.
Just before dawn, a person walking by Robb Elementary School realized something was very wrong.
One of them was actually knocked over. One of them did have some damage.
The 21 white crosses representing each life taken May 24th, 2022 were in a tight circle facing the opposite way.
Who would commit something like this? Who would do something like this?
Uvalde Police Chief Homer Delgado drove straight to the school where victims' families were already repositioning the crosses.
I've got to be honest, I take things very personal. Ultimately, it's my job. So I take full responsibility for this.
As families wonder why this happened, they also struggle to understand how. With the school still considered evidence, they thought DPS was on patrol 24/7. Delgado is trying to confirm if a trooper was on duty last night.
She was just a happy little girl.
For Vincent Salazar, his heartache deepens. He says the cross for his granddaughter, Layla Salazar, has been vandalized before.
For me, it's disgusting to see what they've done here. This is sacred ground.
Salazar will honor Layla in the same way she won 6 gold medals in track. Look forward and don't turn back.
She had no room for second place, and that's what she told us.
Uvalde police are asking everyone in the Robb area to check their cameras, see if you see anyone walking by between 11 last night and 6 this morning. They also purchased security cameras to monitor the memorial site. Uvalde CISD volunteered to install more. Texas Representative and former Uvalde Mayor Don McLaughlin announced a $2,500 reward for any information leading to an arrest. Alicia Nieves, KENS 5.
I'm getting in the elevator, and these 2 high school white boys tried to get on with me. And I just dove off. I said, y'all ain't killing me. I am scared of young white boys. If you white and under 21, I am running for the hill. What the hell is wrong with these white kids shooting up the school?
Now we're talking about how it has been 8 months since the deadliest school shooting in Georgia's history, and family members of one of those victims say they don't want the road to justice to drag on any longer. Thank you so much for being here for Fox 5 News at noon. I'm Alex Whitler. Family members were in a Barrow County courtroom for a hearing for suspected school shooter Colt Gray. Fox 5's Tyler Finger joins us live now from outside the courthouse with the next steps in this process. We imagine this was an emotional day for those victims' family members. Tyler.
Yeah, Alex, good afternoon to you. Normally, the next steps would be getting ready for trial, but we learned today that the accused Appalachia High School shooter may never actually stand trial. I'll talk about that in just a moment, but first, I want to take you inside the courtroom. You're looking at the accused teen killer, Colt Gray. This is the first time we have seen his face since his mugshot was taken. Until today, we weren't allowed to show his face, but a motion was made to change that, and all sides agreed. Colt appeared via Zoom for his status hearing. Colt's attorney Alfonso Kraft told the judge that his client is moving toward making a non-negotiated plea to avoid a trial. That means he would plead guilty without a sentencing agreement, which would give the judge discretion on how to sentence him. Kraft said a decision will ultimately come after they finish some investigatory work and after Colt visits with a psychologist this month. Colt's attorney said that the psychologist's report will be ready by the end of June or early July and said they could possibly set a plea hearing for October. That would come after the trial of Colt's father, Colin Gray, which is currently set to begin in September. Prosecutors accuse Colin Gray of allowing his 14-year-old son, Colt, access to guns, knowing the boy was a danger. I spoke to the family of Coach Richard Aspinwall, one of the 4 killed in the mass shooting, about today's news. The family was split on if a trial should happen. Take a listen.
I don't want to see no plea deals. I don't want to see nothing negotiated. I want to go through the trial process, send him to prison, and that's it.
You want jurors to make the decision?
Absolutely.
I can't say he's guilty because it's not my, but if he is guilty, then yes, I would like to see this end. If he wants to plead guilty, then it would just be a better route for everybody. Get it behind us.
And the Aspinwall family says they want to see Colt get life in prison without the possibility of parole. Colt's father, Colin Gray, appeared in court last month for a change of venue hearing. The judge here in Barrow County ruled that the Barrow County will not have jurors actually decide Colin Gray's fate once he goes to trial. A decision, though, is still up in the air on whether they're going to actually move the trial to a different location here in Georgia, or if actually they're going to bring jurors from a location other than Barrow County here to this courthouse to hold the trial. That's something we are still waiting on. We're about 2 weeks away is the deadline to be able to get that motion or get that ruling in, according to the judge when he talked about that last month. We're, of course, going to be following all the latest developments here in Barrow County and, of course, bring it to you on air and online. We are live in Barrow County this afternoon. Tyler Fingert, Fox 5 News. Alex, back to you.
Certainly.
If you white and under 21, I am running for the hill. What the hell is wrong with these white kids shooting up the school?
Milwaukee for late May. Father of the school shooter in Madison is in jail tonight, charged with multiple felonies in the case. Police arrested Jeffrey Rupnow overnight, 5 months after his daughter opened fire inside Abundant Life Christian School, killing fellow student Ruby Vergara and teacher Aaron West before dying by suicide. Hannah Hilliard is in Madison tonight.
A bold message to the public.
We arrested Jeffrey Rupnow, the father of the shooter.
Madison police arresting the father of the teen girl who opened fire at Abundant Life Christian School in December. Investigators say 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow killed a teacher and classmate with guns provided by her dad, 42-year-old Jeffrey Rupnow.
There was a gun safe in the home. Based on our investigation, it did not stop the teenager from having regular access to the firearms.
Why the 5-month gap between the incident and the arrest?
It's been, again, a very thorough, lengthy, impartial investigation. It's taken some time to get to this point.
Court documents show police discovered a manifesto in Natalie's bedroom called, quote, War Against Humanity.
I do know the teenager had a fascination with weapons and school shootings. She often talked about them with people she met online, people from all over the world.
Police say 2 guns found at the scene of the shooting were both legally purchased by her father. No one answered at his Madison home Thursday, but a small memorial for his daughter now sits on the front steps.
You see anything this morning or know anything was going on?
No, I didn't know anything was going on, but I mean, I felt sorry for him. I mean, he comes over, visits and stuff. I mean, he's taking it pretty hard.
Madison's mayor with the school community on her mind.
It takes a long time to even feel like you can have a normal day after something like this.
We are expecting to see Jeffrey Rupnow in court for the first time on Friday, where he'll be facing 3 felony charges. Reporting in Madison, Hannah Hilliard, WYSN 12 News.
And that mass shooting injured 6 other students, one of whom is still in a hospital tonight. Before the shooting, investigators say Natalie Rupnow was communicating with the man in Florida through social media. That man, described as Rupnow's boyfriend online, was in court this week charged with plotting a mass shooting. We posted that story for you to read on the 12 News mobile app. Milwaukee for late May.
Milwaukee
for late May.
Milwaukee
for late May.
Right, and the facts here and the charging decision by the DA are unique in a way that one legal expert I spoke to says he's never seen before.
This is a very unusual case.
An unusual case with a tragic end. April 18th, court documents say 26-year-old Ziare Dalton got in a fight with the mother of his child, beating her and threatening to kill her inside an apartment near 15th and Cherry. Mid-fight, investigators say Dalton's stepson, Jalen Gray, came home and, quote, told Dalton to stop hitting his mother. Court documents then say Gray used his AR-style pistol and shot at Dalton multiple times, not knowing Gray's mother was in the line of fire while he shot. She died at the hospital days later. Dalton is now charged with felony murder, even though he wasn't the one who prosecutors say pulled the trigger.
If you're attempting to batter someone and in the course of doing that, someone dies because of your actions, you're now on the hook for felony murder.
Dan Adams is an attorney not connected to this case. What do prosecutors have to argue in this case?
Because he attempted to commit the battery, someone died as a result. So they have to get those two parts.
Gray, who's now 18, is not charged with the murder of his mother, but he is charged with illegally possessing a firearm. Court documents say he had a juvenile record and confessed to police he bought the gun, quote, from someone on Facebook a few weeks before the shooting.
I think it's safe to say that the state of Wisconsin have their theory of the case, which was even though the teenager was not supposed to have his own firearm, in this special circumstance, he used it in the defense of his mother, and tragically, she was caught herself in the crossfire.
Just such a tragic story, Emily. Milwaukee police confirming tonight the stepfather, Dalton, is in custody.
Yeah, Deanna, he was also shot multiple times and was taken to the hospital. And worth noting, we did try and get a hold of the family tonight, but did not hear back.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Milwaukee
for late May.
There will be no charges filed against the Ohio officers who shot and killed a man in Milwaukee near the Republican National Convention.
That decision from the district attorney's office. Aaron Mabin is live with a look at exactly where things go from here. Aaron?
Well, Ted and Mary, the district attorney's office sent us a hefty letter after 9 o'clock this morning, and we have been going through it throughout much of the day. The big thing is those 5 officers from Columbus, Ohio, will not be charged. They do not face any wrongdoing for the death of Samuel Sharp. His sister telling me she's not surprised.
Drop your knife! Drop the knife now!
This police body camera captured the chaos on July 16th, just outside the Republican National Convention security perimeter. Investigators say Samuel Sharp was holding a knife in each hand and tried to attack another man. Officers intervened, eventually opening fire, killing Sharp. Investigators say the 5 Columbus, Ohio officers involved were part of a patrol unit called in to help during the RNC. Monday morning, District Attorney Kent Lovern cleared the 5 officers of any criminal liability. Lovern says Wisconsin law allows someone to use deadly force to protect someone else if that person believes it's necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. Lovern says those 5 officers who fired on Sharp told investigators they believed Sharp meant to seriously hurt or kill the other man. Sharp's sister briefly talking with Fox 6 Monday afternoon.
I mean, historically, across the United States, there's no, no real track record of prosecuting killer cops. So that expectation, wasn't really something that we were expecting.
After the shooting, relatives said Sharp had known mental health challenges.
The community knew him. They loved him. He was a great guy.
In the days following the shooting, Milwaukee protesters questioned why out-of-town officers were outside the security perimeter. For the rest of the convention, MPD required outside departments to have local officers with them.
That does not stop the work that we're doing to still get accountability and justice.
Now the DA's investigation is closed. And within the last hour, those same protesters who were out here last summer following this deadly shooting sent us a message letting us know that they are not happy with the district attorney's decision. We also reached out to the Columbus Police Department. We are still waiting to hear back from them. We're live in Milwaukee tonight. Aaron Mabin, Fox 6 News.
Aaron, thank you. The State Department of Justice collects data on the use of force and arrest-related deaths. The FAD is when one or more of the following happens. The officer utilizes force that does result in the death of a person. An officer utilizes force that results in the serious bodily injury of a person. The officer discharges their gun at or in the direction of a person, or the person dies while detained, arrested, or in the course of being arrested. Now, if an agency has no reportable incidents for a month, they must submit a 0 report. You can find a link to this dashboard on our Fox Local mobile app.
I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But you know, when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues. And that's true in every community that I've visited all across the country.
Milwaukee.
For late May.
New tonight at 10, a disturbing incident at a track meet between Waterford High School and Rufus King High School last night. Now, parents of Rufus King High School track team members are speaking out. Jamila and Angela tell us their daughters were the targets of racial slurs. Megan Lee talked with both of these moms about what happened and how it's being handled.
Athletes on the Rufus King track team were back in the comfort of their own track Thursday afternoon.
They didn't want them in their community, and it showed.
Jamila Benson says the team had an uncomfortable night at Waterford Union High School for an away meet on Wednesday.
It shows that, you know, that they're targeted wherever they go, and they shouldn't feel that way.
She tells me her daughter and other runners from Rufus King were targets of racial slurs at the meet.
We got watermelon, we got chicken, just racial things that are on purpose.
And that's not all.
They were all getting off the bus and someone was like, the gangsters are here. And so it was almost immediate from the time that they got there.
These hurtful words aren't sitting right with these moms.
I think it's just inappropriate because you think they're safe. You think they're safe with other kids in different school districts because they're with teachers, they're with referees, and it shows that they're not safe.
These incidents forced the Rufus King coaches to make the tough decision to forfeit the meet in the middle of competition and head back to Milwaukee.
They're going there to be athletes. They're not going there to have to deal with other people's ignorance.
Angela Harris and the other track parents got this email from the Rufus King athletic director saying the inappropriate behavior continued despite our efforts to address it on site. It also states that he's following up with both the Waterford administration and the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association. Has your daughter ever ran into this type of issue at sporting events around the state?
No, Rufus King travels all across the state for track meets, for basketball, many things like that. And this is the first time that she's ever come home and shared this type of situation before with us.
In a statement, Waterford superintendent told TMJ4 News that the school is actively investigating the matter and that behavior that targets others based on identity has no place in their schools.
They need some sensitivity training. They just need help. They need education.
In Milwaukee, Megan Lee, TMJ4 News.
A terrible thing to waste. Environmental racism and its assault on the American mind. Written by Harriet A. Washington.
A Milwaukee Public School closes its doors for lead cleanup for the rest of the school year. Students at Westside Academy at 31st and Brown spent their first day at Douglas Middle School on 18th and Nash. As 12 News' Zoe Henry reports, the new school is nearly 3 miles north of their usual building.
A new morning routine for Westside Academy students and parents. How was it trying to get up and get ready for school this morning?
Kind of hectic, pretty much. Just scrambling around trying to get them ready to come out here.
Students from the school at 31st and Brown will be spending the rest of the school year 10 minutes north of there at 18th and Nash in Douglas Middle School. Westside Academy is the latest building to shut down for lead paint hazards.
I'm blown away by it. You know, I just hope that my daughter wasn't affected by it. And you know, I'm going to take her to the doctor Friday and get her checked out.
Right now, MPS has 3 schools closed. The district moved students from Starnes Early Childhood and La Follette schools in March. Both are still closed. MPS Superintendent Brenda Casellia says the district has spent close to $2 million on lead cleanup. Parents with mixed feelings.
Handled it pretty good, I guess, because I didn't want my kids around the lead anyway.
I feel if they knew they had the problem, it should have been taken care of ahead of time, especially with lead, but you never know what happens.
Next Monday, Brown Street Academy will close for lead remediation. Those students will join Westside Academy students here at Douglas Middle School. In Milwaukee, Zoe Henry, WISN 12 News.
So back in March, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention denied city officials' request for federal help, saying cuts by President Trump eliminated its lead program. Now in an interview with CNN, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson says the federal government shouldn't be involved.
And you try and pare back government, there's some things that you're going to have to reverse. And it sounds like Secretary Kennedy is going to take a look at this and see if he needs some experts on this in CDC. But again, this is an issue that's been around a long time, and local and state officials ought to be able to handle this.
The Milwaukee Health Department will hold a lead screening clinic for MPS students this Wednesday. The screenings will be from 2:30 to 6:30 in the afternoon at North Division High School.
You know, this entire radio program has been nothing but a setup to try to point the finger at me as being a racist. And I suspect, Gus, that you must be involved with the police here, because there is a racist diversionary movement going on right now, right here. Because every person that has called here has tried to attack me. So obviously, y'all hate white people, and the very fact that I've been in MOVE for 42 years, setting an example that not only my brothers and sisters, but all kinds of black people from all kinds of black movements respect. You must be cops. You must be cops calling in here. You just must be trying to divert, you know, my energy and submerge my energy. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to stay on this line anymore and allow it, because you people are being used by this system to push racism. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing right here. I don't even know why you invited me on this show. You're trying to use me as some kind of target. You don't give a fuck.
Filth, flying filth.
About MOVE people being in jail and being innocent. You don't care about what this system is doing to life. All you want to talk about is white people. And where is the solution in that? Where is the solution in that? You ain't got no goddamn solution.
Filth, flying filth.
You ain't got no goddamn solution. John Africa got solution. He got solution.
The city of Philadelphia is taking more steps to apologize for the 1985 MOVE bombing, which was a massive police operation that culminated in the bombing of the headquarters of what the city deemed at the time as a radical group. That bombing resulted in several casualties and a fire that destroyed 2 blocks in West Philadelphia. Today, City Council introduced a resolution declaring May 13th, the 40th anniversary of the bombing, as a day of reflection and remembrance. NBC 10's Yukari Nakayama is joining us now. And Yukari, I know you spoke to family members of victims who died in that bombing.
Yeah, well, Jackie, the Africa family whose family member's home was targeted in that bombing, tell me they're surprised and happy that the city is recognizing that tragic day. They say that they hope that that tragic and dark moment in Philadelphia's history never happens again.
Before I move for adoption of the resolution, I ask that we observe a moment of silence for the victims who lost their lives in the MOVE bombing 40 years ago.
As we're days away from the 40th anniversary of the 1985 MOVE bombing in Philadelphia, a resolution passed that vows to reflect and remember those impacted and lost due to the destruction. Mike Africa Jr. says he remembers that tragic day like it was yesterday. It was his great aunt's home that was targeted and ultimately bombed.
You know, there was people in the neighborhoods coming up to me telling me that they dropped the bomb on MOVE. It was disbelief. It was chaos. It was, you know, to see your family members watching their family members on the television and being killed is unbelievable.
His family belonged to the MOVE organization, which was about black liberation and promoted a back-to-nature lifestyle. That bombing, followed by a fire, killed 6 adults and 5 children. Also, it destroyed 65 homes along Osage Avenue. Despite 2 grand jury investigations, no one from city government was criminally charged, which is why this resolution came as a surprise to Mike Africa Jr.
You know, I grew up believing that all politicians were liars. And that's probably true for most. But Jamie Gauthier kept her word.
If we don't sort of dissect the MOVE bombing and why it happened, I think we won't be able to heal as a city. And it's also important to commemorate what happened so that it will never happen again.
Councilwoman Jamie Gauthier introduced this resolution. For her, it was a no-brainer. For Africa, this is just the start.
It means that we have to keep working. This is not the end. This is the beginning.
Now, the councilwoman told me that she's hoping to make this an annual remembrance event. Now, Mike Africa Jr. tells me that he's looking into creating a memorial for those MOVE members. Here in Center City, Yukari Nakayama, NBC 10 News.
Filth, Florin, filth. Context of white supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, May 10, 2025. So I have been told. Pause for the 11 lives lost 40 years ago in Philadelphia. The MOVE bombing, let it burn. The order given, let the whole house and block burn down, but 11 lives lost. 6 of them so-called adults, 5 children, and then 200 plus black homeowners left unhoused because they didn't just let the one MOVE house burn down, they let the entire Negro neighborhood so-called burn down. Hey, because you have one alleged group of so-called radicals in your community, did they burn down the whole community? You don't have a community if white people can come in and bomb and roast the entire neighborhood because of one maldoer or group of maldoers. Anyway, and again, the C.O.W.S has done a lot of coverage of MOVE. That was actually an event that I studied prior to the C.O.W.S coming into existence. I had read books about all of that and seen documentaries about all of that. It then came up in Is Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? Michael Mayers mentioned in that book as well, the similarities, cults of the 1970s. Anyway, but we've done a lot of coverage of MOVE. Obviously, we read, or I don't know if it's obvious, but we did read Mumia's Live from Death Row in the Catherine Massey Book Club. Mumia was in Philadelphia at that time and did a lot of coverage of MOVE, has written extensively and talked extensively about MOVE for the past 40 years. I was looking to see if he was going to have commentary to commemorate the 40 years since the bombing, but I haven't found it yet. He is still in greater confinement, but even from there, he has still done research and talked about MOVE relentlessly. But we had Dr. Jason Osder as a guest on the program. He did a PBS documentary, Let the Fire Burn. It came out about 10 years ago, close to the 30 years from when all this happened. He was a guest, I think, in 2014. We had Pam Africa as a guest on the program. But I mean, really, for me, fast forward all of that, Sue Africa, Filth Florin, guest on the broadcast. You heard that she accused me of being a police officer and all the rest. Y'all just hate white. Man. We have done a lot of quality coverage of MOVE. Maybe when they put the archive together of all the coverage and even the extra, I went to the lecture series at the University of Washington, Stephanie Camp lecture series. Her parents raised her in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, cowbell. Her black father in a tragic arrangement. I spoke to him at the 2023 Stephanie Camp lecture series at UW, and he did the introduction, and he talked about growing up in Philadelphia and doing all these photographs and such. And I said, oh wow, he was in Philadelphia during the 1980s. He would have to know about MOVE. So I went to talk to him, and I said, hey, excuse me, sir. His Stephanie Camp has passed away. So I said, I'm so sorry about your daughter. Glad they had the memorial. Yum, yum, yum. Okay. His white wife stepped away for a moment. So I said, excuse me, sir. Do you know about MOVE? His eyes got as big as like silver dollars, man. Oh my goodness. Like, he said, man, they were a cult, which is fascinating because I was going to ask him if he had said, duh, idiot. Of course I know about MOVE. Once he said that, I was going to ask, did you think they were a cult? But he said, black brother, look here. And he also said, I took photographs of MOVE, and they are online at the University of Pennsylvania in the archives of, I guess, MOVE in the 1980s, Philadelphia. Maybe some of our program, at least the Sioux Africa broadcast, should be in that archive too. Anyway, so he said, you can look online and see my photographs, which I did. He says, Black brother, I went to one of the MOVE houses. Oh, my Lord. He said, they got these children running around. Sioux Africa had children there. One of them died in the bombing. The tragic arrangement there, too. But she was not there at the bombing. She was in greater confinement. Some people pointed that out as suspicious. Come to your own conclusions. Anyway, but he says, Stephanie Camp's black father, he says, I went to the MOVE residence, and they got these children on the floor, and then they got all the dogs, because, you know, they're back to nature and vegan and all the rest of this craziness. And I said, yeah. And he said the dog defecated on the floor. He says the child, who's like 3, 4, has a banana. The banana fell on the floor. It fell on top of the dog poo. The child picked up the banana, now with extra, and continued snacking. He said, I don't know, do you call social services? What do you do? What do you do? He says they were a cult. He said, I tried to tell my family and other friends. He said, right on the move. John Africa, Sioux Africa, I'm with it, down with this. It's a cult, man. You didn't see. He had the banana. It's a cult. He said they wouldn't listen to him. Sioux Africa would have been more than enough for me. Now, the banana, that's a whole nother level of WTF. But Sioux Africa, equally WTF. WTF. I'm on the move, all right. I wouldn't have been at the bar. You wouldn't even have to worry about that. Like 5 minutes with Sioux Africa. Deuces. I'd have just been watching on TV like, is Sue there? Sue wasn't there. Sue wasn't there. On the move, indeed. Anyway, I told you, for better or for worse, from now on, every time I hear about MOVE, the first thing to come to mind is not Mumia or anybody else or Birdie Africa. The first thing to come to mind is filth, florin, filth. That's what I think of. Man, when you do not understand what it means to be white, you end up in a cult with Jim Jones, Sioux Africa, Tim Wise, and just go on and on and on. Anyway, compensatory call-in, not for spectators. Much obliged to all of the investors who have kept the C.O.W.S broadcasting for 16 years. Hey, what have we done for 16 years? That was some of it right there. We interviewed Sioux Africa, Pam Africa, Sioux at Jesus Christ. Anyway, but what have we done for 16 years? There you go. Much obliged for the folks who've kept us on for 16 years, and then specifically robust gratitude for the folks who have invested in my counter-racist excursion to god-awful Milwaukee. I have not even checked like Cash App in months. I did the same thing when I went to Jonestown. That is part of my strategy for making sure that I save, like don't take out a nickel for extra chitlins or Brussels sprouts or nothing. Save, so that if I get to Milwaukee and have to buy 8 gallons of water to bathe or whatever else, or I think Jeff Dahmer's cousins are going to get me, I have to get out immediately, I'll have a few extra nickels so that I can flee and get back to relative safety of the Seattle plantation. But much obliged. It is not that I'm ignoring anyone who has invested. I don't even open my Cash App. That is just funds to hope we can survive Milwaukee. If you are not able to invest, might get DEI'd out of your plantation, you can certainly pray for Gus T. for the duration of the time that he is in Wisconsin. Doesn't it sound dangerous? I've included all the extra context, audio reports. These are things every time I play things from Milwaukee. That's from like the last 5 days. That ain't no ancient history. That's really, in fact, Miss Scarborough said, Gus, that's Sade Robinson's mother. She said, do you remember Samuel Sharp black brother that got gunned down at the Republican National Convention? I said, oh man, I forgot about that. That was in Jesus Christ. Yes, I remember now that you have jogged my memory. Yes, the officers weren't even from Milwaukee. These were Ohio suspected race soldiers. You're supposed to be in rooting on Elon, brother J.D. Vance. You're supposed to be, doing it up at the convention and swapping jokes about Obeezy, Kamala Harris, Sleepy Joe. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Talking about the Bucks, man. What are you doing shooting black? You don't even live here. You don't even live here. You don't even live here. Where did you get a gun? Like, did you fly with a gun? Like, real talk. Did you checked your firearm just in case niggers get uppity and try to rape while you in Milwaukee at the convention? Really? I'm not interested in going to Milwaukee for about 1 billion reasons. Ask me, do you remember Samuel Sharp? Yes, I remember Samuel Sharp got shot at the convention. Not at the convention. He's right outside there. Of course, he couldn't get in. He got credentials for that. Come on. Anyway, much obliged to the folks who have invested. You can pray. Or at minimum, share the broadcast. Let folks know. Gus T braved Milwaukee, lead, water, and all. Jeff Dahmer stomping grounds to cover the Sade Robinson murder trial. And they say, who? And then you can fill in the rest of Sade Robinson. Check the news. Anyway, speaking of checking the news, for once and for always, check the news. Dr. Welsing was correct. Neely Fuller Jr. was correct. Dick Gregory was correct. Dr. Kamal Kambon, they were all accurate, and many, many others. But those are folks that we talk about on a regular basis, guests on the program and all the rest of it. All of these folks robustly, unanimously endorsed. Check the news locally, nationally, globally, like all the time. Be aware as much as you can of what is happening. None of these folks endorse I don't read no whitey newspaper. I don't listen to no whitey CNN. I don't, listen to no whitey PBS or whitey 60 Minutes or no whitey France 24 and then get all that foolishness on out of here. I don't pay attention to that. None of them. The exact opposite. Give me all of it. In fact, that is the correct approach because we have way too many non-white people as a result of the system of white supremacy. We are grossly ill-informed about pretty much everything that is important and worthwhile to know in a system of white supremacy racism. White people are most to blame for that, but it does not change anything. Anything. Check the news. Now, for all time's sake, why is it important to check the news? For Sade Robinson. Really, could stop right there because that's how I know about that case. Checking the news and then keeping up with the news to be aware of what's happening in that case. Now, adding on to that, speaking with Sade Robinson's mother, Miss Scarborough, again, much obliged to Irie who encouraged, reach out to her, it would be constructive. So talking to her now more regularly for, I guess, a couple months now at this point. So having some rapport, I guess they would say, with her. And so talking not about nonsense, like trying to be constructive, learning more, preparing, and grasping how all of this, why all of this happened in a system of white supremacy racism. I changed really from Jonestown, the book club, and just researching different books that we've read, biographies. These are things that are not fiction. So being in a habit, going through newspaper archives and other sources, just being serious about researching racism. Folders, organizing the information when you get lots of material, just being serious. That is why I encourage turn off the television and do things that are serious that require using your brain computer, which I did for this case. So went through and got all of the articles from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, the local paper, on Sade Robinson. Get them all. Go through, get the police reports, get the court documents, go find other criminal records throughout the state of Wisconsin for the alleged killer. Go get those documents too. And then go through and read them. That, I would submit, was a part of how I was able to form rapport with Miss Scarborough, just having accurate information. So you have done some research on what happened here, trying to be accurate, respectful of her offspring who was killed. So just being able to go through some of these records in a professional and serious manner. I didn't just sit down and watch YouTube and what have you, and people, now go get the records and study. Same thing we do for the book club. What do? Highlight. That's what we all do. Go through it, just read and highlight. What did you think was significant? What did you think was important to go through some of these criminal records for the alleged killer in this case, who has really nearly 20 years of criminal behavior in the state of Wisconsin alone, maybe elsewhere, but nearly 20 years of criminal conduct. To look through these reports, patterns, things that are relevant, Sade Robinson case, oh man. Even we're reading the report, Miss Robinson says, Miss Scarborough, she says, man, you see the part where they got someone who's being held against their will in the police report? An old Max Anderson, that's his name, suspected killer and rapist, that he's here? Yeah. Person held against their will. I'm reading, this is from Pewaukee in Wisconsin. They have all these names. It is so necrophilic in my opinion. They do that in Washington State as well. I'm not, even Seattle, right? But man, they have all of these wacky town names and county names in Wisconsin, in areas where there's no black people, no dark people, just Jeff Dahmer and his ilk. But it'll be Pewaukee, Waukesha, and all that's like, come on, man. If you're going to kill and slaughter all the dark people that are there, change the names of the town, man. Make them all Madison. That's what they should all be. Door County. That's what they should all be. Waukesha. What is going on here? Pewaukee, even Milwaukee. What is that? Chop you up. That's what it is. Now, he's talking about the alleged killer in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. This is page 13 of his arrest record. This is from 2010. That's why I said it's like 20 years of criminal records. Okay. It reads, when Sergeant Gary ordered Anderson to come out from under the blanket, so he's hiding, the police come in the residence, and he's hiding under a blanket. He's 19 years old at this time, by the way. He's 19 years old. Come out from under the blanket. He did so and immediately started swearing, "Fuck you! I hope you're proud to serve your country this way." While Sergeant Gary was placing Anderson in handcuffs, he conducted a quick search of Anderson's person. Anderson stated, "Yeah, you like feeling my balls, don't you? You like feeling my tits." WTF. Now, even, what kind of man is this? You have breasts and testicles? Like, what is that? Is that the LGBTQ? Like, what is going? What is going on? What are y'all doing out in the village of Pewaukee? What is going on? Much less, I cannot imagine being a black dude and I'm mouthing all. They didn't press the panic button on me right at the courthouse. So you like feeling my balls, don't you? Man, you talk about nigger knocked now. Like, oh my God, we got a mouthy coon. We got a mouthy coon. Maybe we see Gus again, maybe we don't. Mr. Anderson continues, at 19. Anderson was disorderly and quickly removed from this area as to not create other subjects being disorderly. One of the officers commented that they thought Anderson was trying to encourage the other drunken whites to riot. All the other subjects that were either defendants for underage drinking or merely field interviewed were very cooperative, minus Anderson. Anderson continued to be disorderly throughout our dealings with him and did urinate in squad 637. That's who I'm going to see in Milwaukee. And it just goes on and on. This is a 60-page report. 60 pages of criminal misconduct. That's just for one count. He got criminal conduct all over the state of Wisconsin, which I said to Miss Scarborough, man, if this was Leroy, this right there, 19-year-old Leroy. Now you tell me, which one of you think your child, you, 19-year-old Leroy, we drunk, we got cannabis, drugs, paraphernalia, underage drinking, someone being held against their will, and you're getting mouthy with, you like touching my balls, don't you? Fuck you, dude. What are you doing? Maybe Leroy survives. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe we don't even get to Sade Robinson because Leroy would be doing some prison time, I think. We're going to show you how much we like fondling your balls. Mouthy with me, underage mouthing up. Where's your parents at? So you talk about these old welfare queens. Anyway, so this is from one of the reports where I said reading, being serious about researching. Now, getting back to the newspaper, because that wasn't the newspaper. That was a criminal report where they had all that foul language. Phil Florence sounded like Sue Africa. The newspaper. I told Miss Scarborough, she said, Gus T., you are thousands of miles away. Why are you so interested in this case? Racists kill black people all the time, every day. This case is last year. Why this case? Keep up with it, come all the way out here, do all this research. Why? Jeff Dahmer, the essence of white supremacy racism. That's what Neely Fuller Jr. said. He explained it in detail. We studied Jeff Dahmer, read Lionel Dahmer's autobiography. Man, I went to the very same newspaper. I just said Milwaukee Sentinel, Journal Sentinel, got all their articles on Sade Robinson. I went back in the archives, started looking at those articles for Jeff Dahmer when he was arrested. I did not want to send them to Miss Scarborough because I thought they would be triggering because her daughter was killed, 19 years old. Her daughter was killed, dismembered. It's been over a year. She still does not have her child's skull. This is from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, July 24, 1991. Horror unfolds. 11 skulls found. Suspect confesses. Going to the next report. And there were, I mean, hey, it's bunches, but I'm going through, let's see, here we go. July 24, 1991. How could anyone do that? Discovery of mutilation. Next one. FBI files show 882 Wisconsinites are missing. Same day, July 24. Same paper. Next one. Everybody always knew he was strange. Talking about Dahmer. They have newspaper articles in the exact same newspaper. Fast forward to 2024. They say the exact same thing about Maxwell Anderson, Sade Robinson's killer. Everybody always thought he was a little odd, strange, peculiar tendencies. The next one. Crime scene looks like tourist attraction. That's why I'm taking the Dahmer tour when I get there. And last one I'll share. There are thousands of articles just in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel about Jeff Dahmer. Dismemberment slangs cited in call for death penalty. They did not bring back the death penalty in Wisconsin as a result of Jeff Dahmer, so they don't have death penalty as an option right now for Max Anderson. Anyway, when I saw these, I need to go through and read these as well. The overlap is staggering between these two cases. I thought that initially, but even more so just going and getting like the granular details of how all of this information unfolded in the papers and was revealed to the public day by day, article by article. It is stunning. Anyway, I went through and started sharing these articles. I did the whole trigger warning and thing, and even told Ms. Scarborough I was reluctant to share this information because, I mean, you know, for lots of reasons. I read the article titles. She knows more about this case than anyone, so she, you know, immediately, as a mother who does not have her child's skull, she immediately grasped the similarities. She said, send the articles. I told you there's only one thing that has been good, constructive, impressive in a positive way about Milwaukee, Miss Scarborough. Everything else is, I do not want to go. But I told you before, unflinching, get justice for my daughter. She did not flinch. She did not waver. Just send the material. Send it all, in fact. She said it does. Yes, it does sound triggering. Yes, for lots of reasons. It is triggering. But send it all. Yes, I do need to see it. Yes, send it all. I see. Yes, send it all. Amazing. But that is why I'm going to Milwaukee. And I said, when I started looking at the Milwaukee Historical Society and the special collections at the Milwaukee libraries, they have boxes of folders on Jeff Dahmer that are not available to the public. Why? You got the Netflix and gore and ghoul and ooh, come look at the skull and what information can we not see about this case? Got to go ask about that too, man, and do the tour. I asked, do they have like a plaque or a monument to Jeff Dahmer's victims, anything to acknowledge, like, oh man, you know, we made all this money at Netflix and, you know, at least let's point out the people, the victims in it. Nope. Nobody who'll be missed. Anyway, at no point did Miss Scarborough say, man, what kind of lame is you reading the newspaper? Lord, you going back reading old Whitey's newspapers and lot. She didn't say that at no point. Check the news, local, national, global. Any hoodles, should be here tomorrow. We'll give more details on that. Normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Give a few quick thoughts on some of the audio segments that we heard, and then get folks who dialed in with observations and thoughts. Let's see. That first segment about the new technology, they have different AI where it can kind of always be listening and processing what you say and transcribe everything that you say and everything that all the people that you're talking to that they say, send you updates based on that, probably, promotional material based on that. I personally would not want anything of the sort. I would not be interested in that, and I probably wouldn't be very excited about talking to someone who had such a device, even if we were talking about, mundane things, bok choy recipes or whatever. Like, I'm good. I'm just, wow. Who else gets it? I'm good. I guess if you have people, like they said, who maybe they're older, having memory issues or whatever the case may be, and so you can have a record of what you said or just reminders about important things that you said that you might forget. I could see a value in that, but wow, that's invasive. I will just leave it there. If anybody has such technology, let us know. Speaking of technology, so now they have the Real ID implemented in the U.S. I thought it was so important. And in fact, I remember that detail. They said a part of the concern about these IDs was Tim McVeigh using fake ID to get his bomb together. If that had been Leroy, you'd think he could have pulled out his old fake, done my Shamika Harris, like, hey, my name is Roscoe Jackson, and yes, I'd like fertilizer and a few of the detonators if you have those. Yes. You say your name Leroy? No, I said Roscoe Patterson. Yes. That's no problem. Right on. Thank you, Roscoe. Appreciate it. Like, okay. That's how we end up their concerns. We got to get Real ID. I'd seen reports where they said this is going to impact a lot of dark people. They had in the report, they had people who might be undocumented, whatever, non-white people. I've seen reports where they said they think a whole lot of black people have ID issues anyway. Ooh-wee, they might end up in that boat as well. Go to the airport or wherever else, so they say you got to have Real ID. Is the airport the only restriction right now? Is that the only place where they, got to have Real ID if you going to fly? Like, man, that's why I say get your passport. At minimum, get your passport. That way, if something happens and you have to get on a plane, decide you got to go to Milwaukee, use your passport, you should be all good. But they have said in some places they already know, man, some black people are gone. I don't know if that means you get hemmed up at the airport or what, but I say get your passport. Let's see. The report, new pope, and I saw the early reports before they came to an agreement, and they had all the niggardly smoke in the air, and then you heard all the jubilee with the white smoke. Again, the symbolism of white supremacy. It's all the time. Everything black is something vile, wicked, conflict, disagreement, white, celebration, innocence, square dealing, fair, agreement. Everything bountiful and pleasant is white, and bad. Man. They said they've been doing this for hundreds of years. The tradition, religion of white supremacy, racism. Can't we be environmental? We can't stop with all the smoke. We got to be burning stuff. Let's see. They had the segment on the program in Chicago, Illinois, where they get young folks, think it's under 25, if they are in danger for greater confinement and lengthy sentences, then they put them in this program where they get help, resources, housing, all the rest of it. Frederick Dennis, privileged black male, and then they had the white dude who runs the program, or one of them who runs the program, Cliff Nellis, racist suspect. When they started with Frederick Dennis, I've said this for years, they love hearing black people, non-white people, I think especially dark people, black people. They love it when they hear us get on and, oh man, Tell us about how tough it was. You and your brothers, y'all had to fight off that rat for the last piece of cornbread. Tell us all about it, Leroy. They love that sort of Negro trauma growing up, and it was just the worst. And oh yes, and we didn't have nothing to eat but one kernel of rice, and the cockroach stole that. They love those sort of stories. Like Frederick, tell us, oh man, you had to steal food and clothes growing up. Oh, it was awful, isn't it? You just had one shoe, didn't you? Oh, Frederick. And then once you get arrested, now okay, we'll help you get a sandwich. Okay, we'll help you get housing. We'll get you some shoes. We'll get you some clothes. Okay, we'll get you some clothes. All that. We can't get you no white women. Just joking. Well, not really. We can't get you no white women, but got you a sandwich at least. We're making progress. You could have got him a sandwich before we got arrested. I keep saying that. Like, why do you have to wait until these dark people get arrested? Now we can put you in a fire training program. You could have done that when they were in school. You go to jail, now food becomes available. You could have gave him a sandwich when maybe he would have never got arrested. If you'd been, oh, you just need a sandwich? Oh, here we go. Yeah. New sandwich, KFC gift card, whatever. Bucket of chitlins, here we go. Make do. Job training program, stealing clothes. You couldn't have, Goodwill. You won't have Louis Vuitton. They might tease you and call you, you're not the freshest coon on the block. But you won't have to steal no clothes. At least you'll have a few pairs of breeches, shirts, socks, at least a few pairs, so you'll be a little bit better. You won't have to go out and, rob and steal to get no breeches. Why do you have to get arrested before all this becomes available? Even Dorothy Robertson and they pointed this out with black parents. Like, man, sometimes the problem, I just need a coat for my child. Oh, we got to put you in foster care, and I hope you don't go to the Hearts and get drugged and driven off a cliff. Hey, well, wait a minute. Why can't you just give me a coat? Might sell it for crack cocaine. We don't. Then once you go to foster care, coats become available. Let's see. Wait a minute. There's even more with that program. So Cliff Nellis, the white man who runs the program, he gets on and it took a little nudging, get old Frederick, realize he needed a little, he had been traumatized, needed a little therapy and counseling. We don't have no Dr. Welsing for him to talk to in Chicago, of course. In fact, we don't even have ISIS papers for him to read, of course, or Delectable Negro. But, we get him a little counseling, maybe a little medication. We talked about that with Abraham Bolden yesterday. In your mouth or in your anus, pick one. But old Cliff Nellis say, I grew up in the suburbs. I don't know nothing about all that growing up traumatized. I said, oh, man, these are the white people that Dr. King said, this is the worst racism I experienced in my life. Going out Hyde Park in these areas, Chicago suburbs, and they throwing rocks and cursing and up in the trees and threatening it. Oh, my Lord. I told you they were going to kill Mahalia Jackson just because she got a house. I don't know nothing about all that. It was just beautiful times. We just had Walter Payton posters on the wall and loved Michael Jordan and thought life was great. Yeah. Let's see. The other section on report on alleged reparations being considered right here in Olympia, Washington State. Now, that's not where I am in Seattle, but I mean, they had Donnie Whetstone, black male, privileged, on the program, and they were talking to him, Olympia resident, and he said the first thing that I learned how to read was the sign that said, whites only. Now, you want to talk about reading comprehension and epigenetics. The first thing I read, not my name, my parents' name, white Jesus, Obama, whites only. Wow. that for sure would be something I would remember for the rest of my life. Wow. Restriction. That's what I associate with. Ooh, Better read, because I might not be welcome. Let's see. They had the report in Texas. They said 1,000 cases. We will have to go back and review because it might be faulty DNA. 1,000. What in the O.J. Simpson? They had said that John Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, they had said that decades ago, like, hey, it's not that we're opposed to DNA, but the science does have to be done correctly for the results to matter, or now we got 1,000 cases. They didn't say nothing about race. As with that report on Chicago, they said they got all these males that get arrested. They didn't give no racial breakdown. I bet it's bunches and bunches of Leroys, Frederick Dennis's, privileged black dudes in Chicago looking like Mike Jordan. They are the ones getting arrested. Anyway, and then they throw in a few Rekia Boyds from now and then as well. Let's see. They already got in Samuel Sharp. They exonerated Natalie Rupp now. Now, that's not Milwaukee, but that is Madison. I think we included that's less than an hour west of Milwaukee. They don't have no Negras in Madison. Natalie Rupp now shot up that school not that long ago. I just played the clip last week. Damian Allen, that's who they were talking about, her boyfriend, down in Florida. That's the one. He had thousands of rounds. He had a plan to go shoot up the schools, and he had police uniforms. That's the one I mentioned last week, and I said, what? He had police outfits, plural? Come on now. And he doesn't like the Negras, as was the case with Natalie Rupp. Now, matter of fact, that's the one they arrested her dad. They put his mug shot up. Oh, my God. You talk about fearful of going to Wisconsin. Look at Natalie Rupp now's white father. I'm not saying I'm no Michael B. Jordan and the young ladies swoon when I walk outside and such. No, I'm not. But, man, this dude looks like the Unabomber, Tim McVeigh. Like, what? I said, man, how many white people do they have that look like that in Wisconsin? Like, man, I do not want to go to Milwaukee for about 1 billion reasons. They had the case not in Milwaukee, the DoorDash shooting that was in Chester, New York, about, I think they said like 60 miles from Manhattan, where this black DoorDash driver, so-called immigrant from the continent, pretend black person maybe, that he is confused. He gets lost. His battery on his phone dies. I guess he was being shiftless, probably cyber stalking white women, right? And his battery on his phone dies. And so he's stopping and trying to ask people like, oh man, which way and where do you know what the correct address is? And he stops to go ask John Riley, who is the highway superintendent in Chester. That should be the best place to go and ask for help, right? He gets out and goes and asks him, hey, sir, do you know, get the hell off my property right now. And shot him in the back. I have said for a long time, or I guess at this point, yeah, for years, white culture is so cowardly. They brag about doing cowardly things just like this. And it's so many of these, oh, I'm so afraid that I got to shoot you in the back as you're leaving with a bucket of chicken. What kind of coward are you? Shooting people through the door. Ajika Owens, that's the one white woman shot her through a closed door. Ooh, I'm so scared. Ooh. Ted Wafer, that was the one up in Michigan over a decade ago. Ooh, Renisha McBride, she's going to huff and puff and blow my house down. I got to open the door and blow her brains out as opposed to just staying inside and calling the police. You can fondle your shotgun if that's going to make you feel safer. What does it mean to be white? And I've said that, I said that last week. I said, man, you go to a house, especially at night. Unfortunately, this was at a time that was dark. You go to a house of a stranger at night. You're classified as black. You are taking your life in your hands. you might not even be able to knock on the door, because they got cases too. Sometimes people, they just pulled in the driveway and they opened fire, started shooting. I would double charge your phone, verify the address. And man, we had people who, written in and called in and talked about the dangers of ride share and doing delivery and all of that stuff. We talked about this for years. Is so many cases just like this of black, like FedEx drivers and DoorDash, Uber drivers. They weren't doing anything suspicious. They weren't snooping on the property. They weren't looking in the vehicles. They weren't peeping into a white woman's window. They had a bag of chicken wings. Someone did order the chicken wings. I'm just at it. Did you order the chicken? Oh, you did? Oh, okay. It can't just be, no, I didn't order no wings. Get the hell out of here, nigga. Oh, okay, my fault. Nah, I got to go get my Glock and blow your brains out. Come in here raping my wife, pretending you're delivering chicken wings. That, real talk, would be something to consider, if you gonna have young people, especially I'd say if they're black males, but Renisha McBride, would be something to consider if you are going to do DoorDash or anything like that, especially late at night. Man, codify everything. How to knock on a door delivering chicken wings and survive if you're going to do it after the sun goes down. Let's see. They vandalized the memorial at Robb Elementary after the Uvalde shooting. I believe 21 casualties. I think these are non-white victims. We studied Columbine. Did they go and vandalize the Columbine Memorial? I know we heard about the clout chaser and going out and peddling his nonsense, but and they chopped down, and I think rightfully so, the trees for Reb and Vodka, the perpetrators. I don't consider that vandalism, but that's like sacred, as they said about what Uvalde and Robb Elementary should be. This is sacred site. You don't come and act a fool up here at Columbine. Sue Klebo might be sitting out here with a casserole, want to sit and meditate, reconnect with Dill. Come on. Deep in the heart of Texas, indeed. I had the segment about Waterford, Wisconsin, the track meet that is not Milwaukee, but that was 30 minutes away, where the parents were there and they said their children got off of the track meet. And, oh, here come the gangsters. Watermelon, chicken. I said when we talked to Miss Natia Taylor earlier this week, I told her, I said, I bet they got a whole lot of areas of Wisconsin where there's very few black people and the Negroes are not welcome. Case in point. What I even have to check the population for Waterford, Wisconsin. That is about a little less than 30 minutes away from Milwaukee. But how many niggers do they have in Waterford, Wisconsin? Where now they said as soon as we step foot off the bus, up, chicken, negras, and this for the track meet. Track meet is normally subdued. I know Carmelo Anthony and Frisco, but the track meet is normally, not that gangster. Maybe I've been away too long. I've seen they get riled up about it now. Anyway, let's see. And then I already got in about Move, Colt 45 as well. One quick one, I guess extra nugget I will play just because I saw this being discussed online on the page, and then we'll nab the folks who dialed in with a hand up. The incident, this happened in Ohio with Rodney Hinton Jr. I'll play the news report really quick and then give a quick thought. Other folks can share on this one as well. Compensatory call-in, context of white supremacy. Right back. Last thought.
The man accused of killing Deputy Henderson now faces the death penalty after a new indictment by a Hamilton County grand jury. WCPO 9 News reporter Sean Delancey has followed this case every step of the way and spoke to the prosecutor about the capital case she now leads.
Yeah, Craig, these are the charges that a grand jury brought down against Rodney Hinton Jr. Aggravated murder carries the death penalty, and prosecutor Connie Pillich says her office will pursue it.
It was the defendant's specific purpose to kill a law enforcement officer.
Prosecutor Pillich says Hinton intentionally hit and killed Deputy Larry Henderson after he watched video of a Cincinnati police officer shooting and killing his son, Ryan Hinton, a day before. CPD says Ryan ran from a stolen car armed with a firearm.
A police shooting leading to what appears to be an act of retribution. Do you see it that way? And can you comment on the unprecedented nature of this case?
I can only tell you that I've never seen someone hunted down and killed like this.
Previous prosecutors have taken these cases up themselves and prosecuted them personally. Is that something you plan to do? And if not, who will be prosecuting it?
I have my top two criminal lawyers on this, Kate Burrows and Kip Guinan.
Have they pursued capital murder cases in the past?
Yes.
As for Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey,
what are your thoughts on the death penalty being applied here?
I stand with the prosecutor. I am the sheriff of Hamilton County. I have sworn to uphold the law, and the prosecutor is following the grand jury.
That said, McGuffey called for a cooling of temperatures for everyone as investigations continue.
But I'm asking you to please, please let justice play out in all cases.
Pillage refused to talk about the police shooting death of Ryan Hinton or the case against 3 teens connected to the stolen car, where all of this began Thursday. Sean Delancey, WCPO 9 News.
Tonight we're also hearing from the Cincinnati Black United Front, who issued a statement on the police shooting of 18-year-old Ryan Hinton. It includes a message for city leaders and Prosecutor Pillage, sharing their expectations into how the investigation into that shooting moves forward, including full and timely compliance with the collaborative agreement's investigative protocols, a parallel investigation by the Cincinnati Citizens Complaints Authority, and an independent expert to conduct an additional review of all relevant body cameras and other available footage. WCPO 9 reached out to the C.O.W.S. to discuss the case further with them. We're still waiting to hear back.
Context of white supremacy. So all this just happened this week and still unfolded. It's so complex. Like you have a apparently black male accused in a stolen car, where you have a police shooting for this stolen car, and they allege that there was a firearm. His father, Ryan Hinton Jr., his father then sees the video, is upset, rightfully so, and then allegedly Rodney Hinton Jr., excuse me, not Ryan, the son is Ryan, the father, Rodney Hinton Jr., accused of being, I guess, upset and retaliating and then going and killing this officer who I believe is classified as white. I guess there will be lots more about this case, and like I said, it's so, what to say, like so many layers to it, man. But someone had posted about this case on one of my social media pages. Again, I do not really mess with anybody on social media. I don't go and write on their page or what have you. People don't generally share my content on social media, what have you, so I'm generally suspicious when people who do not share my content or engage with me at all come to post anything on my page. They posted something about this article, which I find curious in and of itself, because I know black people, plural, who brag about not checking the news. How do black people know about this case? It didn't happen somewhere super popular. I don't think Cincinnati is, woo, everybody is blowing up to see what's going down in Ohio. So how did so many people, on a planet where lots of people, even a year later, are very ignorant about Sade Robinson, never heard the name, and you got a dismemberment in Dahmerland, how does everybody find out about it? Same thing I said with Carmelo Anthony. And all I can conclude, cases where there might be some sort of counter violence and the police shooting, I guess there's 2 elements there, police shooting and then counter violence, they attract a lot of attention. I've said for years, I am not interested in police shootings at all. These will continue. And I mean, hey, they said, now I don't know if it's true or not, but they said he got out and he ran. Fuller has said for decades, no flee, no fleet, comply. They allege he was in a stolen vehicle. Like, man, you are classified as black. Matter of fact, you're classified as a black male. You are under the age, I'm going to say under the age of 50. You are in a stolen vehicle. You should expect to get shot on sight. Period. And Dr. Cambon would even say, you should let your friends know, like, you all participate in any hooligan crimes, whatever, do not contact me ever. I don't want to be out joyriding, none of that. Expect to get shot on sight. And that, they might say that exactly. He had a gun, drugs, crack, white woman held against her will, all of the above, who knows? with what they call it, excited delirium. You know, they got lots of ways they would justify that. But I mean, oh my God, if that's true, I'm just saying, hey, this is the system of white supremacy racism. This is what you should expect to happen if you're reported in a stolen vehicle. They shoot lots of black people in vehicles that are legally their property. Now get to the other side. All I can say, the cases I generally do not follow along, cases that attract a lot of attention to many people classified as black in this part of the world, I generally don't have the same interests. That's why I'm interested in the Sade Robinson case, and most of the black people that I'm aware of are not. Don't even know about this case. And particularly cases with counter-violence, like Carmelo Anthony, because I do not think people classified as black in the U.S. are great thinkers. We're not. We don't even check news and information. With counter-violence, Neely Fuller Jr., the longest section of the code book, unless I've been misinformed, is the section on war. Because there's so much details, he calls for so much precision and thinking if you're going to engage in counter-violence. When I saw that news report today that Mr. Hinton could be facing the death penalty, they talked about, capital trial. That's what I'm going to see in Buffalo. Oh, man. And, I mean, hey, you kill a white enforcement officer, eep. That's about what you should expect to. And you're a black male, Mumia Abu Jamal, eep. That's what I mean in terms of, okay, so was this thought out? Certainly, victims guaranteed qualified. I don't have offspring, grieving father, for sure. He might have even thought out temporary insanity. Maybe. But man, you get an all-white jury and you killed an enforcement officer, even if it's, they say, life in prison. Like, has this improved things? What's it going to be like for the rest of his attempted family? Now it's going to be, you got a no-count carjacking son, and you got a no-count cop-killing dad. Oh, this is just going to be the most beloved family in the Buckeye State, right? Right up there with Ezekiel Elliott, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, certainly counter-violence is allowed. There's lots of that, but there's been lots of counter-violence aimed at enforcement officers. I said the same thing with Christopher Dorner. I didn't think that was well thought out. First people that he killed, non-white people. What kind of response to racism is that? We talked about that specifically with Dr. Welsing. Christopher Dorner, your response to racism is killing non-white people? Does that make logical sense? We talked about that in detail with Dr. Welsing. February 2013, our Black History Month contribution. But yeah, that's not something that I would jump up and down about, and all the rest of people, they can support or feel how they feel about Mr. Hinton Jr. Again, I submit, for lots of black people who do not pay attention to the news, and you don't live in Ohio, hey, the wildfires in California impacted lots of black people. You had lots of black people who died, lost property, lost their businesses, all of that. It's so many black people that I've talked to who are clueless about all that. Even black people who live in California. How is it black people totally miss that and its impact on black people, but immediately know all about Rodney Hinton Jr.? I submit because a lot of white people talked about that case with. Same thing with Carmelo Anthony. He had lots of white people talked about that case and talked about that case on social media to get our attention. There are far more important things in the world. That's just nice little dramatic, bizarre case that you can watch play. And really, you might just be watching another black dude get the death penalty. Anyway, I'm not interested in no social media commentary on that case in particular. We can just watch all that play up. We can go on and right on. He did it. Right on, Mr. Hinton Jr. Right on, Mr. Editor. Right on him. Right on to the gas chamber. And now, do the black people in Ohio become any safer after this? Absolutely not. If anything, if history is the teacher, it will be substantially worse. Race soldiers believe in payback. Shout to James Brown. 605-313-5164. The code 564943 #. Press *61 if you would like to participate. Do you have real ID? You can let us know that as well. Are you compliant, ready to fly? Folks who dialed in with a hand up, our caller 2899 should be with us on Now by the Hands as we proceed. Folks can let us know if you are interested. Do you have real ID? Are you real ID ready to roll? I already said I am rolling on my passport to Wisconsin. Does that count? I guess I did not go and do the real ID, right, for Washington State. I didn't do all that. I didn't do the enhanced ID. I didn't do any of that. I'm just using my passport. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, Shamika Harris, 2899 should be with us.
Hi, good evening, Gus. And I think I may have possibly called on the wrong night. Am I allowed to share a workplace racism story this Saturday evening, or do I need to wait?
Workplace racism is always allowed on the compensatory call-in. It used to be here first, but yes, ma'am.
Okay, I will be brief. I just wanted to just share some information. I hadn't called in a couple of months, but I just wanted to let you know that I got some my Black self-respect, and I told you and the other callers I've been dealing with issues with my boss. And, this actually about a week ago, last week, I don't want to say I confronted him, but he went in my office, he took some pens this time, put them, in the initials of his name. I went in his office calmly, spoke with him, and, I asked, well, first, I didn't want to come in accusatory, but, I just tried to put things in a question form and ask about, him, seeing anyone come in my office or what's kind of going on. And, and I said, this has been going on. This is not the first time that's happened. It's been other things. And, I would appreciate that it would stop. And he got very defensive, and he was like, well, I definitely wouldn't have done anything like that, especially, since things have been so tense in the office, which things really have not been tense. It's just that he is not getting, I guess, the emotional connection that he wants. So anyway, that was kind of the end of that conversation. Probably about an hour or two later, he sends out this email, which I find was very interesting. Myself, my coworkers were on it, as well as HR and his boss. And basically the email was something along the lines, let's remember about having personal boundaries, not going into people's offices, things of that nature. And so I guess he pretty much had a bullet point about respecting personal space, boundaries, things of that nature. I didn't honestly take it as anything very positive. I took it as he is probably trying to get ahead of the situation in case, I go to HR. But I have, now he's having these emotional tantrums. And, I've been in an abusive relationship 2 years ago. So, he's mad. And I think I've told you, like when he gets ready to exit the door, he's, hitting the door and just making all kinds of just noises and sounds because he's angry. And I can't, it's white supremacy first and foremost, because no non-white person could ever do those kinds of things. But I just wanted to share, that information with you. And with that being said, there, like I said, ever since I have been pulling back, I've pulled back and tried to just say, hey, things have to be, professional. It's a boss relationship with with their the person that they supervise. It's been very stressful because, as I said, he's having these emotional kind of outbursts. But I did want to gain some sliver of Black self-respect and just put him on the notice that, hey, this needs to stop because, I've been calling in for a while and I have been very scared to be direct about it because of fear of with my job and things of that nature. although this did happen, I did get my contract renewal for my job, so that is available to me. So I'm just trying to determine if I can just make it for a year. I think I'll be vested, then I can just go to another company. But again, it's very it is affecting, my mental health to have to be responsible for somebody else emotionally, and that is not what I signed up for. But I just basically just wanted to share that and just kind of tell you, how he sent this email out. And like I said, in my opinion, I don't think it was a legitimate thing. I think it was more so just to make it look like, he is, I guess, proactive about these sorts of things. And as I say, sent it to myself, coworkers, and his bosses and human resources. And so now I've also noticed that some of the other white people are kind of looking at me a little funny. I had the white female come in there, and she was nice and talking, and she's like, well, is everything okay? And of course I'm definitely not going to go, and I'm pretty sure they already know, but I just don't know how to navigate it any longer. But that's all I wanted to share with you about that situation and that email, and I will leave it at that.
Wow. Did you get a picture of him putting the initials on your desk? Did you get a picture of that?
I did, and I did show that to him. And, I said, there's been quite a few things that have been coming up with, initials, and, and I told you his reaction was, I would have never done anything like that, because he's very defensive, because, things have just been so tense around here. So, yes, I do have that picture, and I have pictures of, other things that, he has been, doing as well. But, yes, I did show that, and I did share that with him. Not via email. It was on my my cell phone, my personal device. But I did share it with him and show him that.
Good job. Good job. Now that you've executed, you spoke to him about the incorrect behavior, and it's been such a long series of incorrect, unprofessional behavior. Even said that time when you all were talking about your salary, he said, hey, we can get together and have a little wine and talk about this after work. Yeah, that'll make things smooth, all that nonsense. Now that you went and addressed all this with him, and he had his tantrum afterwards, and you say he's been pouting and having his little fits, at work since then, would you have done anything different? Would you have not even done it all? Was it even worth it to go and address all this?
I think, in the system of white supremacy, I think, we are, I think, if anything, it kind of helped me to be more self-confident in that ability to address things that should not be happening at work, because I've been talking about it a while, as you know. Kind of have tons of documents of things, happening that I have. I have in a Google spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, a Google Docs sheet at home. So, no, at some point, I guess it just got where it's mentally affecting me, and also emotionally, because I get anxious, I have, anxiety. But what I was thinking is that I was going to try to use that email in some kind of way to, maybe respond back, or somehow tie it in about, seeing if I can, move back to my old office, which was not, next to him. And I have actually emailed him about that before, saying, hey, I'd like to go back to the office, that I initially started, which is across the hall. And, he, of course, has, said, no. And, I've tried to actually give professional reasons logistically, why it would be a good idea. But, he's like, no, we need you right here. And, that's next to him. But you know, I was thinking like, okay, he sent out this email about distance and being professional. You know, maybe I can respond to that. And of course, you know, HR is going to be on the email, and other people, and then maybe tie it in to somehow, you know, being able to just go back to my old office. Because I think if I can increase that, you know, the distance, I think I will be better in most. But to answer your question, if I could think back, I would think I would do the same exact thing, because it just helps me to, at the least, just kind of express myself instead of just kind of holding all that stuff within for all that time.
Much obliged for the answer. That makes logical sense. Yeah, in the workplace, Fuller talked about that. In the workplace, it is important to be able to confront. She stayed in the question lane too about, you know, professional behavior and who's been engaging in this, and absolutely, I think that's a great strategy as well, to see if you can get back to the old office, just and not even accusing anyone of anything, but just, you know, hey, logistically, me doing my work, being efficient for getting tasks done. It's not like you're even asking to go someplace brand new or whatever. I'm just going back to where I was assigned previously. I think that's great. And this sounds so, it reminded me of that tacky book Kindred. Not that Octavia Butler's tacky, but just that is not one of my favorite books, fiction. But it reminded me of Rufus and Dana, where on the plantation, he has to keep her around. Like, you got to be near me, and all of a sudden she's trying to get away, and no. You got to be around her, even when, you know, you act like he's upset with her. Like, no, I got to keep my nigger woman around here. Like, I'm mad. She won't give me sexual access, and I'll be asking her to go out and leaving notes on her car, and this old raggedy wench nigger woman. Oh, I'm so mad. That's why I'm stomping around the office. She said that time when it was another dude came in for work purposes, not, you know, work purposes, but another guy was in her office for work purposes. And she's, you know, discussing business and boom, 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 get this, boom, boom. And she says he's over in the office doing the same thing, knocking, smashing stuff, bang, 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 pow, pow, pow. What? That's my nigger woman. You don't be in there talking to my nigger. That's my brown sugar. What you in there messing? I endorse. See if you can get back to the other office and professionalism. Always an advocate, because I'd been saying the whole time that he'll just continue, because she had been talking to us about this for a long time. Like, he was leaving the notes on the car and all that old rag. I said, in fact, that was the one I said, man, if he's paying attention to where you park at like that, this is the sort of dude that would come and try and follow you home. And yeah. I think you did the correct thing.
And I think,
I'm sorry?
Yeah, thank you. No, I was going to say thank you. And no, you're right. And it's not only, in my opinion, it doesn't just seem like I'm dealing with somebody who is a, you know, white supremacist, but it also seems to be, you know, some mental issues, you know, at play, or, you know, the power and control. But my thinking is like trying to just mention that about, you know, going back to my old office on that email, because in a way that puts, you know, HR on notice, because, you know, they can't say in the future, you know, like, hey, you know, I did try to kind of move away from this person. I'm not going to say it directly about him, but, you know, to me it serves that purpose of, you know, I'm trying to kind of get away, and if I'm refused or they're denying me for whatever reason, you know, I have proof, you know, that was going to be like a liability. Let's say something should happen, you know, where I do report him, and, you know, HR, let's say they respond saying, oh, no, you can't move. And it's like, well, I tried to mitigate the situation by, you know, putting space in between myself and him. And that's what I was like thinking of doing a reply all, and making sure those key, you know, stakeholders can see that. So in the future, should something happen, you know, I can kind of show like hey, I did, I asked, I tried to mitigate the situation. But yeah, like I said, I just wanted to share that with you and share his response. And like I said, I'm just trying not to take all this hitting and slapping and slamming personal, but it still, it gets to me, because it's like when you're trying to, or you're somehow responsible for somebody else's emotions of how they feel if they're not getting the attention that they want, you're having to pay for it, passively aggressively, of course. It's very mentally draining. So that's all I wanted to share. I didn't want to derail the main topic too much, but just wanted to share that, and I will continue to let you know what happens. I did get my contract renewal, surprisingly, so I'm happy about that. But it's like, yeah, it's definitely extremely racist, toxic workplace.
Much obliged for sharing. Neutralizing Workplace Racism, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, although it used to be a part of the compensatory call-in on Saturdays. Bravo, black self-respect. And it is draining, like all that. Even if it, if he had just said, my bad, never happen again, and, move forward. It is draining. Like you're trying to work and do business, talk on the phone, get your contract renewed, get a raise maybe, and all the rest of it. And he's all this stuff. And it's not just noise, like because you're in a factory or a warehouse or something like that, which is not the case. It's noise because he's mad, want to get sexual attention from this nigger woman, and she's denying me, trying to go out, get. Come on. Like, man, system. And again, this is why I say it's so important. Talk to your children about white supremacy, racism. I don't think any of us, we got Mother's Day coming up tomorrow. I don't think any of us wants our daughters to go into a situation like that and never had any sort of conversation about racism in the workplace, what to do. This sort of thing happens all the time. It would be much better. Kindred, man, this has been going on for a very long time. Shamika Harris should be with us as well.
Yes, sir. May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Reference the segments that you played this evening. Oh, well, first, I guess I'll answer the question. I do have that Real ID. I've had that for a couple of years. Reference the segments that you played. The first one was that Be Pioneer bracelet, and the lady was talking, I forget the question. The question was like about a lack of privacy, something that people are going to have to get used to. And the lady said that you could turn the bracelet off. And I'm thinking to myself, right, yeah, you can turn it off. And she said you can delete any conversations from the app. And they say that deletes the info from their servers. And I have a hard time accepting that as a true statement. And then it had me thinking about workplace racism. How you say you're probably being recorded, talk like everything you say on the job is being recorded. Well, now, regular people on the job are going to be able to, basically record everything and have a transcript of everything that happens all day long. So, and these are just, would be like regular so-called coworkers, not the most powerful people in the company. Let me see. The thing about the new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, 69 years old, chose the name Pope Leo the 14th, I guess. In the paper, first he looks like a white man, okay? But in the paper, it said that his maternal grandparents were Creole. What I saw, it said Creole of color ancestry. So the implication is that he has two non-white grandparents, but he seems to be functioning as a white man. So I just thought that was interesting, especially with the last pope, the way they kept saying he was the first pope from Latin America. You know, I don't know. I don't have anything to say about the white South Africans. The black male, Frederick, the one who was telling that whole story about his mom being addicted to heroin when he was a little boy and he wanted the Disney life, which I guess what he saw on TV, the way he thought white people were living. And the lady, the way she was asking those questions, she goes, it probably seemed never ending, right? It was just like, I mean, it almost sounded like she was smiling. And then she asked another question. You know, he was just talking about how difficult things were. And then she goes, downward spiral again, right? You know, like it was almost like a question mark, exclamation, question mark at the end of that sentence. It sounded like that place was called the Mac House. Was it M-A-C-K? I don't know. That is the name. That's interesting. When he got there, you know, he said, you know, he had a room, my own bed. He was able to go out and find a job, make my own money. And again, that just made me think of The Blind Side, that whole story. And then he talked about a program called BOSS, which he said stood for Better Opportunity Supporting Services. I think that's what he said. But he was talking about boxing, and I'm just not sure boxing is constructive. It seems like consensual assault that can result in injuries, and maybe even brain injury. It just seems like a terrible idea. I mean, I guess if boxing is going to stop you from robbing a store or selling drugs, maybe, but it still seems dangerous and possibly non-constructive there. Uvalde, I thought it was a non-white male. He said the cross for his granddaughter has been vandalized before. Now, this is a non-white female child, victim of racism, and they have vandalized that cross before. And it's the segment said that they wanted cameras there, but it seems like they want that because the law enforcement officials didn't do their job, or, well, I'm not. Maybe their job is to be supportive of a system of racism, white supremacy. They didn't stop the vandalization. How about that? That's a better way to say that. Natalie Rucknow, the girl who did the shooting, her manifesto was called War Against Humanity. That's what they said. And it just made me think, you know, human, hue meaning color, man meaning person, war against colored people. And, you know, if that's what was meant, I always think about that, the way white people would not fall into the human category if hue means color. On my job, there's this older white lady that I talk to. And I mean, I talked to her. She has been there a long time. She knows a lot of things. But anyway, like last week, she was telling me about how she was going on TikTok trying to learn how to do some kind of dance where you don't lift your feet up off the ground very much. And I was like, okay, you know, I'm just listening to her. And then she starts telling me about some other lady who knows how to do the dancing. And she called it buck dancing. And after she called it buck dancing, she was like, after she said the word, she's like, oh, you know, and I know you shouldn't say that or whatever. But she continued to call it buck dancing, and she talked about it. And I don't know, she seemed to be pretty interested. I thought I'd just share that with you guys. That's all I have.
Buck dancing. I'd never even heard that you're not allowed to say buck. Like, I would have had to ask a question there, like, who told you you can't say buck dancing. Did they explain why? Like, what's the penalty for saying buck dance? Is it a fine, or do you get in trouble? They box your ears? Like, what? Man, she gonna do all that. Like, can we see it? Let's break it down. Let's see what does the buck dance look like. You can do it pretty well now. Like, man, what in the world? That's why I said, like, white people in the workplace. Oh my God, let's just keep it on the job, because once it, and even there, the racism and racist jokes abound. But once it veers off of the workplace, like, oh, you can start counting it down, like 10. And see, it wasn't even ignorant, because I'm ignorant. I didn't know that you're not supposed to say that. Like, is it, what's incorrect about saying buck dance? Or buck even? They got the Milwaukee Bucks, right? I keep seeing that en route.
I thought a buck was a male slave or an animal.
Milwaukee Bucks. I just said they don't censor. They don't tell Giannis to come on there and just say Milwaukee Bees, because we don't want no. They don't say that. They just won a championship. They don't say that with Milwaukee. We can't say. They don't say you got to get a new team name like they did with Washington Redskins. You got to change that. You done shamed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you're gonna come up with a new name. You could be the Beavers, or I don't know. They don't. We got they even call dollars bucks. That's the same thing, I think. What's the money? Niggers. They don't hush your mouth. You can't say, I got paid today, man. I get my new bucks today. Hey. Hush all that, Lee. You speak proper around here. What's wrong? Nobody said. Who has said that? Has anybody here been corrected? They hush you for saying bucks?
They don't stop me from saying bucks. I don't really use that term because I just think of male slaves.
Ditto. Me too. Well, I use it a little bit, but I also think of male slaves. But I've never been reprimanded, and I haven't heard anyone else, fuss at somebody for saying bucks. Even if I've heard people say buck breaking, where they're being real explicit about, yes, Negro slaves. I've never heard anybody, hey, you're not supposed to. But hey, I'm ignorant about racism. That white woman, hey. Right on to the white woman. Workplace racism, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in commentary to share, *61 with a hand up. Irie in Louisiana. Miss Scarborough finally listened to one of the C.O.W.S programs all the way through. She listened to the program this week, Something in the Water, about the lead poisoning in Milwaukee. She said, that young lady, she's talking about Miss Taylor, she said, she is so smart. Wow, I learned so much from her. She's right in Milwaukee. Down, she could have went, I kept saying, you could have went to see her. She was right there at the, Milwaukee Film Festival. You could have went and chopped it up and said, my daughter's school closed down because of the lead. But Miss Scarborough has a lot on her mind. Anyway, but I recalled in during that program, Miss Scarborough did say, make sure you thank Irie for encouraging you to call, which I did. And then when I was reading the article titles for Jeff Dahmer this week, she said, man, you should have called a month earlier so we could have had more time to go through all this. And I thought, man, I did not want to call when I did. You are lucky Irie gave me encouragement at all. I might never have called. Real talk. Anyway, much obliged, Irie. Should be with us as well.
Thank you. I'm glad to be of service, to produce justice somehow, some way, despite all that has occurred to all of us. And I wish there was some kind of way I could get her a sympathy card or something. I don't know how to do that. If she has a mailing address or something, please let me know. I feel compelled to do that. And that was a good show too, with the water. And I was just thinking during that segment, and just now, the children that I have been teaching this week, on and off, and just wondering who's been exposed to lead and whatever else, that y'all know how it goes in school. I've said it, but I just feel so bad because it's things these children can't control. They can't control a lot of the stuff they do, and it's so many combinations of environmental and nutricidal acts that's been put upon them. And there was a little boy in gym class. He has an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, and I'm not sure why, but we were getting ready to play beach ball, and the gym teacher was talking about the rules, and this was like a fourth grader. So he starts clapping, not real loud, but he started clapping. So the white male gym teacher pulled him out of the lineup to play. And I don't know if he did this because I was there or not, but he tells the little boy, "Hey, man, why would you do that while I'm talking, man? I was telling you the instructions. That's important that you listen." And in my mind, I was like, perhaps pulling him to the side, but like before you play the game, but pulling him out of the lineup, which is basically making him ineligible to play for some amount of time. I'm sure that's what the kid was feeling. So he was kind of looking down or whatever. And so I made a suggestion. I said, "Hey, you know what? Maybe," oh, I'm sorry, I jumped. So he was like, "Why'd you do that?" And the boy said, "I don't know." He said, "I don't know why I did that." And so I said, "Well, next time maybe you can just pat your knees because it won't be loud like clapping." And then that's when the white man was like, "Yeah, that's a great idea, Miss Irie. I like that. Yeah, do that next time." And again, I don't know if he was genuine or not. He was soft-spoken with the little person, but at the same time, I just felt like, what's going on here? Can he not control himself because of something he ate this morning? Is it lead exposure? Is it, just what is it? Is it the fact that this is the only chance he's going to get to move this whole day, And he's literally excited. He's a growing child. At a different school, a young white male, I think he was in 6th grade, and I was subbing for PE again, interestingly, in a different school. And the young white male asked another white male teacher I was teaching with, younger than the other person I just mentioned. He said, "Mrs. So-and-so, what's a racist?" And he didn't. He ignored it altogether. Ignored it. So I just walked off so I could try to see if he was going to try to answer the question. And he asked him again, "Mrs. So-and-so, what's a racist? Because the kids keep saying I'm racist. What's a racist?" And he didn't answer it. So I said, "Okay, well, I'm not about to answer it either." I didn't know if that was the right thing or the wrong thing. But I just made a note, And, that's my report for school, what I've seen. But it's been kind of harrowing on my end. There was something that you asked if we talked to our offspring about, and I can't remember what it was. It was a very racist event, and I know I did. And then not too long after that, something had happened to my son. It wasn't really, really, really bad, like death or injury, but it was bad enough. And I was just glad that I had said, "Listen, you live in a system of racism and white supremacy. Your safety is on you. But at the same time, if you think you have to make a choice of life and death, for your safety, you better be dang sure, because there's no coming back from it. And the person that's going to be looked at as the aggressor is you. And that's just what it is." And so thankfully he didn't escalate the way I'm thinking most people would have, because after he was aggressed, but the fact that somebody pursued him for something menial was very disturbing. And I had to wrestle with that among some other miscarriages of justice. I had to go to court for something, and the judge was like, "Well, I can't believe we're here for so-and-so, and this is a simple matter, and, can we get out of here by 3 o'clock? No, I'm sorry, can we get out of here by 5 o'clock today?" And I'm sitting there like, so you're telling me I can't pursue due process because it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon you want to be done by 5. And I know, just like everyone else, if we have to continue to the next day, that's just what's going to have to happen. But you're determined, Mr. Judge, that you want to be done today because this is something you think is simple. It's actually not. There's more to it, but you're only hearing one aspect. And I was so nervous during the process. It's like I did everything I could to study and prepare. I had my motions, I had my exhibits, and the clerk didn't even bring my stuff to the courtroom like they were supposed to. So I don't know. It's just crazy. And then the only other thing I was going to say, as far as the headlines, somebody mentioned the new pope. I'm not saying he ain't allowed to act like a white person. Obviously, if he's the Pope of Rome, he's definitely acting on behalf of the system. He's most likely white identified. To be a Roman Catholic, to me, is white identification. But I do feel he's not white. Somebody gave a litany online of his family line or where he come from. So he's from New Orleans. He has family in New Orleans. They grew up in like around the 7th Ward. And I know during the times when white people were more obvious with the racism, you had, what they call, I think it's passed on blonde, the people that they kept marrying each other so they could stay light skinned or be just a little tan. I think that's where he would fall in that category. But I'm not saying he's not functionally white. But then again, who am I to define? Who am I to define it? I've heard so much. So, yeah, I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Much obliged to Irie. That's exactly what I said. If I was teaching or had some sort of job where I was with children, and one of the little tykes said, man, they keep throwing that word around, racist. I keep hearing that. Yeah, what's a racist? Let's talk about something else. I told you I'd already had that codified. That's what I'd be thinking in my brain. You ain't gonna DEI me out of my job. You might be a plant sent in here from somebody. See, we'll get him. See if he'll quote some Neely Fuller Jr. And then bang, we got his cardboard box. Wait, he might have on that B device, so they'll have a whole transcript waiting, green light on, waiting. Let's see what we say. Let's talk about something else. And I do my combo. Ask your parents. Let's change the subject. That's all they got. Like, dang, we were ready. We're gonna try again tomorrow. We're gonna try again. She said that the other instructor, white person, didn't say a word. See, codified. You ain't gonna don't talk about race. In fact, might find out the person that they saying is racist is me. New topic. Let's see. Speak with your children about the sexual abuse in the workplace. That was the question that I asked their parents to talk to their children about, because that's so important, and not wanting our offspring to bump into what we heard from the young lady who was saying the fellow was coming in and putting his initials on the desk with the blank. Can you imagine? Look here, Leroy, Obeezy. Go to the intern's desk and get the Post-it notes and leave them in the shape of OJ or OB for Obeezy. Come on. And at a white intern's desk. Come on. Anyway, I have to check to see if Miss Scarborough, because she does, I wanted to say fan mail, but that doesn't seem appropriate. Like, fan mail would be like an entertainer, so I guess supporters do contact her to that sort of thing, cards and sympathy and that sort of thing. So I have to see if she has like a address set up for all of that, so you can send her a card. Matter of fact, let's see. Will Sade's Voice Foundation.com, Sade's Voice Foundation.com website where they have all the information for Miss Scarborough, updates, all that good stuff. I don't immediately see like a mailing address, so yeah, I don't know. But like I said, she does get support, I'll say, instead of fan mail. So maybe she does have such a, address or something up. I'll ask her about that at minimum, and yeah, I'll ask her and see what she says. Any hoodles, we should be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'll update online, social media, all the rest of it. So-called Mother's Day, attempted non-white moms are super important, especially those who breastfeed. Extra A pluses. Anywho, do we miss anybody else? Anything else they wanted to make sure they shared before we wrap up?
Apparently having a black cat makes you, we've been joking about this during the week. Sorry. I shouldn't be laughing. It's not funny.
You said having a black cat makes you what now?
It automatically makes you a witch.
Oh, yes. They have it's National Black Cat Appreciation Day in August. And they talk about all of that, the vicious slur campaigns against the Negro kittens, and you're a witch and their bad luck and all of that. But Negro Kitten Day is every August. We have celebrated before, is specifically to combat all of that insidious racism against Negro kittens. In fact, almost, or it is somewhat related, and albino affairs even, learn a little bit about everything. So been doing my plants, went to the plant class yesterday. It was so fun. They had an African milk tree, which I thought was a cactus, but it's not. But it does look like a cactus, but that's neither here nor there. I had seen this plant before, recently, like in person, several times. I'd seen it for a number of reasons, I guess. One, because it gets very large, like just enormous. It is crazy. But that's one. And then two, like I said, I'd literally just seen this plant, picked it up even, and had read, because they're so wacky, it's poisonous. So they advise you to wear gloves and such when handling it. Three, the version that I had just seen was albino, and thus very expensive because it's rare, a mutation. However, they say the same thing, albino affairs, that they do with the albino African milk tree, that you have to be careful because it doesn't have chlorophyll, which is like melanin for plants, because it doesn't have that. Very susceptible to burning, so you have to be careful about placement. Can't get too much of that like direct intense sun because it might burn. And in fact, the plants that they'll call them variegated, some of them, they have really pretty designs and such, where they are not green in certain spots, or either they'll be like really pale green and then dark green, like it'll have a really just pretty color design on the leaves. They will lose that variegation if they don't get enough light. They will just go back to green, and specifically the ones that are kind of almost albino-ish with the color sequence, like it'll be green and then almost white. They said those white spots don't have chlorophyll. What that means is, one, The plants that are like that, you have to leave them in the sun even longer because the green part has to compensate and do the work for the white parts that do not have chlorophyll. I said, man, that sounds like workplace racism where the coloreds have to do the work for the lazy white people. Then they say some of these plants can be a little difficult because I just said you have to have them in the sun a little bit longer to compensate because a lot of the plant doesn't have chlorophyll. So the part that does has to do more work, takes longer. 2, you can't have them in super intense heat. Same thing I just said with the albino African milk tree, because since it doesn't have chlorophyll, susceptible to burning. And it'll be the parts specifically that are white that are susceptible to burning. Heard that before. Even in the plant world, some things change, some things do not. Any hoodles, we should be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. All of that said, much obliged, hopefully constructive, worthy of your time and energy. New book coming up this week, but Seattle Film Festival this week as well. Man, such an overabundance of films. It has been wacky, but even still, reading more important than watching television. The football, I meant to say that. I think Shamika Harris brought that out before we wrap it. Just Brain Computer came up with the liquor. Mr. Frederick Dennis in Chicago, he said he made his football club, or boxing club for mental health. I was like, dang, you get hit in the head. The best I can hope is maybe they don't actually do any sparring. Maybe they just hit the heavy bag, the speed bag, they do the training, they do the mitts. Maybe they just do all of that. And then you don't have to hit anybody in the head, and so you don't have any brain damage. You just, hit the bag, hit the speed bag, jump rope, do the mitts, do all that stuff. You get in the ring, and, you just still do gloves, all that. No hitting in the head, and especially people that are under 25 because your brain is still developing. No hitting people in the head, especially no hitting black people in the head. Seems like that and name calling, really hard habits to break. No hitting black people in the head. No name calling black people. Creator, we ask that you help us maximize our time and energy to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Remind us not to waste non-white people's time and energy, especially our own. No name-calling black people. No gossiping. No throwaway offspring. Sobriety would be best. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.